It's going to linger across a lot of Scotland through Thursday as well. To the south of that, a drier night to come. Clear skies for much of central areas of England. The south and east still holding on to some of that humid air, but it's really becoming much more restricted to the far south and east. But it's going to be the rainfall that's going to be the big watching point through Thursday. A very wet day for Northern Ireland, Scotland, northwestern areas of England. We could see some localised flooding issues from that rain. It's going to be fairly persistent and slowly sinking south and eastwards into northern areas of England, parts of Wales, some central areas. Ahead of that in the southeast, it should stay dry and fairly warm.
That warm feeling inside from Boxed Boilers, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Celebrate a spectacular summer with your chance to win an incredible £30,000 in tax-free cash in our Great British Giveaway. It's the biggest prize of the year so far, and it's totally tax-free. What would you spend that on? Luxury holidays, a new car, or just put it away for a rainy day? Whatever you do with £30,000 in tax-free cash, make sure you don't miss out on a chance to make it yours. For another chance to win £30,000 in tax-free cash, text cash to 63232. Text costs £2 plus one standard network rate message. You can enter online at gbnews.com/win. Entries cost £2 or post your name and number to GB07 PO Box 8690 Derby DE1 9TT. UK only. Entrance must be 18 or over. Lines close at 5 p.m. on the 30th of August. Please check the closing time if listening or watching on demand. Good luck.
This is GB News, Britain's news channel.
Alex, can you tell us about Tom Cruise's diet?
Tom Cruise's diet, I mean, so there was the story today in the Daily Mail talking about the fact that obviously, you know, the guy has a very, very strict diet. He pretty much has no alcohol in his diet, has very strict times he eats. He only eats meat and fish.
Isn't happy.
And actually, can I just say, I think this is very depressing. You know, life is short. I don't know why people have, and lots of my friends who go to the gym, they're absolutely obsessed with only having chicken and rice and barely any sauce on it. It's just, what's the point, you know?
You make a good point. Life is short. What do they...
And so is Tom Cruise.
YOLO, you only live once.
Yeah, YOLO.
But then you can live your life as you want to live it. So if you want to live it the healthiest person ever in the whole world, then, you know, that's your one life.
But you raised a great point in the meeting today, which is 64 old anymore? It's not, sort of 62. It's not old, is it?
No.
62 is the new 40.
Yeah. I mean, the thing is, though, Tom Cruise is a multi-millionaire. Doesn't he want to just, like, relax and enjoy his life now? Why is he still getting up at 5:30 in the morning to go to the gym and eating chicken breast with no sauce on it?
OK, Tom Cruise is another one of these driven people. Tom Cruise is absolutely 100% driven to drive a fighter pilot aeroplane. I mean, how could you actually learn to drive a plane? He is so driven, he is so disciplined, and when you're that disciplined, you know about blood, alcohol, you know, sugar spikes. I bet you he drinks vinegar. Bet you any money he's into gut health. I'm telling you, gut health is in. Everyone's talking about gut health.
But what's the point when you're 62?
No,
I'm hoping when I'm 62 that I'll just chill out.
He doesn't.
No way.
He doesn't need the money either. He can just chill. Like,
no, he doesn't want to chill. He so doesn't want to chill. I tell you what, in Hollywood, because my husband's a film producer, in Hollywood, you know, when they retire, they're either 90 or they're dead.
Yeah.
GB News, the People's Channel.
A very, very good afternoon to you. It's 3 p.m. and welcome to the Martin Daubney Show on GB News. We're broadcasting live from the heart of Westminster, all across the UK. On today's show, no Tory future for Nigel Farage. It's official. The future is Farage-free for the Conservative Party. Today, leadership hopeful Mel Stride told GB News he's the sixth and final candidate to slam the door in Farage's face. Is that the right thing to do? Or is the party over for the Tories? Next story, there's been a massive surge in parents claiming disability benefits for the under-18s, soaring to a staggering 730,000, up 200,000 since lockdowns. Is this real, or is it a racket, or something more sinister, a systemic medicalisation of our children? They're the least likely to attend university, the most likely to fight for their countries and the most likely to commit suicide. Yet they're labelled far-right thugs whenever they complain. Are white working-class men the most overlooked demographic in Britain? And did this demonisation help to drive the recent riots? And yesterday we learned that Nottingham triple killer Valdo Calacane was sectioned 4 times and yet was still freed to kill in the community. With up to 120 Brits losing their lives to psychiatric outpatients every year, is it time to bring back secure institutions for the mentally unwell? And
yeah, I entered the competition and I forgot all about it, but then all of a sudden I said I've won. Got a £3,000 voucher, which they're going to send me when I can go on holiday.
Bosh, we found him. Street cleaner Paul Spires, who has bagged a holiday after all, has spoken to GB News. We get the full interview later. It's a clean sweep. Welcome to the show. We've got an action-packed menu today. It's curtains for Farage if you ask the Conservatives. Are white working-class men the most demonised people in all of society? What they do to deserve that? And is it time to bring back secure institutions for the mentally unwell? Lots of topics there for you to chuck your thoughts at me with gbnews.com/your say. That's the way that you get in touch. But now it's your headlines, and it's Tatiana Sanchez.
Good afternoon, the top stories. We start with some breaking news this hour. 52-year-old Julie Sweeney has been jailed at Chester Crown Court this afternoon after she admitted sending a threatening Facebook message on August the 3rd, stating the following. This is what she posted: "Don't protect the mosques, blow the mosque up with the adults in it." A judge has encouraged prosecutors to consider charging offenders who played central roles in the recent disorder in parts of the UK with rioting, a charge that carries a maximum sentence of 10 years. More on this breaking story as we get it. To our other top stories of today, Ukraine's top commander says 100 Russian prisoners of war have been captured in the Kursk region. It's after Ukraine launched a surprise offensive that President Zelensky has admitted was easy and met with little resistance. And it comes as the Russian city of Belgorod has declared a state of emergency amid daily Ukrainian shelling that the governor says is destroying homes and killing civilians. Evening Standard defence editor Robert Fox says Ukraine wants to keep the Russians guessing.
They're probing, they're pushing. Yes, you said they've got into the Kursk pocket. Zelensky admitted with great ease. They're now probing now away to the south and the east to Belgorod, which is where all this started, keeping the Russians guessing again. The game at the moment is to throw the Russians off balance for as much as possible.
The Australian Department of Foreign Affairs has confirmed an 11-year-old girl stabbed in Leicester Square is an Australian tourist. Australian consulate officials in London are offering support to the girl's family. It's also been reported the victim, who suffered 8 stab wounds to the face, neck and upper body, will likely require plastic surgery. Reform UK leader Nigel Farage has no future in the Conservative Party, no matter who replaces Rishi Sunak as leader. That's according to Tory leadership candidate Mel Stride. Stride today confirmed that he would not allow him to sit on the Conservative benches in the Commons. It means that all of the 6 candidates to replace Rishi Sunak as leader have declined to work closely with Nigel Farage. The position is in contrast to Sunak, who twice told GB News last year that Farage could join the party, saying it was a broad church. In other news, violent attacks against women on British railways have more than doubled since 2021. New data shows the number of crimes against women and girls rose by 50% and the number of sexual offences jumped up by 10%. Unacceptable behaviour such as touching, upskirting or indecent exposures being experienced by women more than ever, with 51% of female victims stating that other rail passengers intervened to try to help. Safeguarding Minister Jess Phillips says violence against women and girls says it's a national emergency.
The government have made it incredibly clear that tackling the scourge of violence against women and girls is part of its core mission. We consider it to be a national emergency, and that won't just change overnight. This is going to take the levers of government working across every government department, making sure that in our education system, for example, that the attitudes that end with men on our transport systems harassing and assaulting women are dealt with at source.
Dead fish have been pictured in a canal that's being tested for sodium cyanide after a toxic chemical spill in the West Midlands. Walsall Council said the Environment Agency told it about a spillage that went directly into the canal at Pleck on Monday. A major incident's been declared and people are being warned to avoid the 13-mile stretch of canal leading to Birmingham. Sodium cyanide can cause headaches, nausea, changes in heart rate and loss of consciousness. The council have assured drinking water will not be affected by this incident. And the latest figures show inflation rose for the first time this year to 2.2% in the 12 months to July. Figures are up from 2% in June this year. The increase was widely predicted and is largely due to prices of gas and electricity for the Treasury. Darren Jones said the new government is under no illusion as to the scale of the challenge we have inherited. Local people in Birmingham have been reacting to the news.
Small increase, but it's massive. Not a lot of people can already afford food. I've got a decent job myself, so I struggle as it is. So I only worry about the people on universal credit or the little part-time jobs who have to actually look after kids.
The inflation's really affecting me because I'm homeless, right? Because I'm struggling to live day by day because of inflation, right? Because to afford anything whilst you're on universal credit, it's very difficult.
And those are the latest GB News headlines for now. I'm Tatiana Sanchez. More from me in half an hour.
For the very latest GB News direct to your smartphone, sign up to News Alerts by scanning the QR code or go to gbnews.com/alerts.
Thank you, Tatiana. So it's official. Nigel Farage will not be allowed to join the Conservative Party, whoever replaces Rishi Sunak as leader. Mel Stride, leadership candidate, has become the latest of the 6 candidates to distance himself from the Reform UK leader, claiming his comments on the Southport attack suspect put the police in danger. So will this fuel the comeback of the Tories? Or are they signing their own death warrant? Well, let's discuss this further with GB News' political editor, Chris Hope, who joins me in the studio. So, Chris, and then there were 6. Talk us through it.
Interesting, isn't it? So, Mel Stride, he's the outsider to be Tory leader. There's 6 of these candidates, MPs, want to replace Rishi Sunak. He said he would not allow Nigel Farage to join the Tory party, rejoin it. He was a member decades ago. That came after Tom Tugendhat said the same thing when I asked him at that press conference yesterday. That means that all 6 of these candidates are saying there's no room for Farage in our party. And that is interesting because I think some would say, what does the next leader do to reunite the right? Arguably, it's trying to draw Farage in, put the warm embrace, the clammy hands of a warm embrace around him, try and get him on side, talk to those the 4 million or so who voted Reform at last month's election. Instead, it's a firm no from all 6. Also, Mel Stride in the interview was quite firm on his criticism of Nigel Farage for questioning whether the truth was being held from us after those dreadful attacks in Southport. Farage said on X, on his X account, I don't know whether the truth is being withheld from us, I don't know. Here's what Mel Stride had to say about that.
How is it helpful when you've got police officers going out there risking their lives in a rioting situation to be questioning whether they're being truthful with the public, for example? It's likely to lead to more police officers ending up getting in more trouble than they would otherwise.
So his remarks,
so it's not responsible.
His remarks are putting the safety of police at risk.
I think his remarks about the police not being truthful, potentially, around what happened, let me put it like this, were deeply unhelpful to those officers that were then having to go out and deal with the consequence of the rioting.
Given all that, would you allow him to be a member of the Tory party if you were leader?
Absolutely not. I made that very clear. So no deals with Nigel Farage. Look, Nigel Farage wants to destroy the Conservative Party.
OK, so that was Chopper's podcast. That's on the GB News website. Excellent innings there. Let's just run through this, because you're absolutely right. There's been quite a furore about this. In fact, a few of the candidates themselves are clutching their pearls. Let's be absolutely clear. You are bang on the money, as you always are. Mel Stride, you heard what he had to say there. Tom Tugendhat said, you said to him this week, could Nigel Farage join the party? No, he said. Simple one-word answer. Priti Patel. Farage is a friend, but I would not allow him to destroy the Tory party. There will be no deals. James Cleverly. Nigel Farage needs to decide if he's a serious politician or a social media content generator. There will be no deals. Robert Jenrick. There will be no deal with Farage. That was last week. Kemi Badenoch. I will not accept somebody who makes it their strength, their job, to destroy the Conservative Party. 6 out of 6 rebuttals. That's as clear as a nose on your face. Chris, you're right. Does that therefore say we don't want those 4.1 million Reform voters?
That's the risk, and I'm surprised that none of these 6 want to say, well, I'll talk to Farage, because, of course, he talks with a Conservative head on many areas and many common cause between the Tory party and Reform voters. Farage, were he here, he's on holiday at the moment, he'd be saying lots of those 4 million were Labour supporters who got annoyed about it with Labour, so it's not all Tory voters, but a lot of them are, and I'm surprised about the turning of face against him. Farage hasn't held himself, I think. Those remarks he mentioned on his X account after the Southwark attacks were ill-judged, and he admitted that they were... Farage himself admitted they're based on some information that may have been wrong online or may have been misunderstood. Also, he made remarks about Putin during the election, again, not where the Tories sit. But the problem the Tory party has had all through going up to the election and during it is they've identified problems and not had solutions. They talked about small boats, stop the boats. Rwanda hasn't worked. Farage is able then to have the easy answer, which is let's pull out the ECHR. Let's have one in, one out on net migration. So the Tory party has said what the problems are, but not had the answers. Farage has the answers, and I don't know why none of these candidates want to think, well, let's talk to Farage, work out a way around and working together. He says he wants to destroy the Tory party. He wants to build it up in his own image. There's so much common ground between Farage and so many Conservatives. It is surprising to me.
It is fair to say that before the general election, there was quite a lot of roses between the teeth from both sides. Nigel Farage himself said, well, I wouldn't join this Conservative Party, intimating there may be a future route in. That route's been slammed down. The drawbridge has been pulled up. There's no way around that. And so the story is, what does this mean for the Conservative Party? If that's a sign they're drifting towards the centre ground, we keep hearing you can only win from the centre. But is that true anymore? Yesterday, you told me, I was astonished by the Ipsos Mori poll. 62% of voters, all voters, don't care who the next Tory leader is. 36% of Conservative voters
last month
don't even care.
They voted Tory last month, and a third of those people don't care.
And that's astonishing, Chris.
It is astonishing. I had a chat with a very senior person in Number 10 this week and said, I'm doing bits and bobs about the Tory leadership this week because not much else is happening, and he sort of laughed. I mean, Labour don't really care who the leader is because they've got their own worries now running the country, and this party, has to work out, I think, in a combination with Farage politically, at least talking about or opening the door to something on that may make some sense. It may be that this is how you square off the MPs. Right now, the only vote that matters is 120 or so Tory MPs. How will they vote? Who will they put onto the final two to go to the membership after the party conference in October? So maybe they weaken this, but as things stand, they're all saying no. I should say all those quotes you read out there, James Cleverly hasn't spoken about this since the election, and nor has Kemi Badenoch. Kemi Badenoch's team do tell me that he hasn't changed their position from the 3rd of June. No to Farage. With James Cleverly, we haven't heard back from him, but as things stand, he's turned his face against him too.
It would take a biblical miracle for James Cleverly to phone you now. Maybe that was him calling a minute ago and say, by the way, I've changed my mind. It was
one of the teams, I won't say which, but no, I'm sure James Cleverly won't.
Isn't going to happen. It's a straight duke now, isn't it? This is the straight dukes. So now there's no chance of cross-pollination. Is that a mistake? Because if the Tory party are trying to do what they've been doing since Brexit, since the early days of Europe, trying to be all bodies to all people, they can't do that. They can't please everybody on net zero. They can't please everybody on immigration. They didn't please everybody on Brexit. They held it together with a sticking plaster. Now, if they're ostensibly saying, can they get away with saying this is about Farage, the man, the individual, or will voters say, well, you're rejecting his position on ECHR, on immigration, on net zero? And does therefore that give a clear binary choice?
Well, there's a risk, isn't there? Because I think the next leader could take the party back into the middle and then be squeezed by Lib Dems and Labour, or try and work out how to attract these reform UK supporters without the support of Nigel Farage. It may be that you can win without Farage in the same way that Keir Starmer won without Jeremy Corbyn, and the far left of the Labour Party was removed from the conversation and Starmer won, and that could happen again for the Tory Party. A 1% swing towards the Tories from Labour is 50 more seats for Tories. So it's very, very tight numbers we're talking about because of the narrow nature of Labour's win, despite the scale of seats they won. So it could work. It's just interesting to see this line in the sand being drawn so early in what will be a long leadership contest.
Well, Chris, hope you put the cat amongst the pigeons. You set the agenda as ever. Top work, my friend. Superb start to the show. Thank you. Now, joining me now is the former Tory MP, Scott Benton. Scott, welcome to the show. You may have overheard the meat and drink of that conversation there. Of course, you're a former Red Wall MP for Blackpool South. A lot of people up there would no doubt sign up to a lot of the policies coming out of the office of Nigel Farage. Do you think this is a mistake to so soon for all 6 candidates, like say, no deal, Nigel Farage, you're persona non grata? Do you think that's the right thing to do, Scott, or is that a mistake?
Good afternoon, Martin. Well, the fact of the matter is Nigel Farage has a huge mandate at the moment. Over 4 million people, predominantly ex-Conservative voters, have just voted reform due to Nigel's inspirational leadership. And for many people, myself included, he's a standout, charismatic figure on the right of a party. And of course, what we are seeing from the leadership contenders in the Tory party at the moment is different comments about should Nigel Farage be allowed to join the party. What we're not really seeing any debate about is how on earth does the Tory party attract those millions of lost voters back into the party fold who have lost trust with the party because of its failures on immigration, on net zero and taxation and all of those different things. And I'm afraid sooner or later, those 6 different candidates are really going to have to flesh out a plan and some convincing answers on how to draw people back into the fold who previously voted Conservative but have lost complete faith in the party because of its failures on these key button issues over the last 14 years. It's very easy to say at the moment, well, we don't want Nigel to be welcomed back into the Tory party fold. Of course, the big question is, why on earth would somebody with so much political momentum behind him at the moment be interested in the slightest in rejoining a party? The wind is certainly in Reform's sails, and I think any notion of Nigel wanting to join the party again is ludicrous.
OK, Scott Benton, I'm joined in the studio by Chris Hope. He's got a question for you.
Hi, Scott. Is Nigel Farage a Conservative in your mind?
Of course he's a Conservative, Chris. Everything he says, whether it be on the economy, on the need to regenerate some of our lost behind communities, international aid, taxation, immigration, all of those things, Nigel is a core, authentic Conservative. And I think that's how the grassroots of a Conservative party would see him. Whether the Conservative leadership hopefuls like it or not, he is the standout, charismatic figure on the right of a party. And I'm afraid he captures the hopes and dreams of millions of lost Tory voters, which at the moment I'm not seeing any of the leadership hopefuls really tapping into or trying to aspire to.
So, Scott, in that case, then, as a former Red Wall Tory MP, and of course you left the party over other issues in the last Parliament, why do you think all 6 candidates are turning their back on Nigel Farage?
Oh, well, I think you really did hit the nail on the head a few moments ago. At the moment, the plan of action for Conservative MPs is to get to the final 2. As soon as you're on the membership ballot, what we've traditionally seen over the last 20 years is Conservative leadership hopefuls pivot to the right, try and speak the language of the grassroots on immigration, tax cuts, all of those different issues. But at the moment, I'm afraid the parliamentary party is centre-left of the Conservative movement, and the only pathway through to get onto the final 2 to go forward to the membership is to try to appeal to what are in many cases generally non-Conservatives within the parliamentary party. They are what I would traditionally they call liberals, certainly Cameroon-type conservatives. And if people want to get through to the final two and to go to members, they have to appeal on that basis to members of parliament. And I think that really identifies the logic behind people really trying to sidestep Nigel Farage at the moment. But as I said a few moments ago, these questions on how do we win back voters who have lost trust on immigration, on tax, on our trust and competency, none of the leadership contenders have really brought together a holistic plan on those issues. And I'm afraid sooner or later, members of parliament, as well as the general public at large, want to see meat on the bone on some of those questions.
All right, Scott, this sounds like you've got the rose between your teeth. This sounds like a bit of a love letter to Nigel Farage. Could you see yourself? Would you like to be selected to stand for the Reform Party?
Well, I wouldn't say it's a love letter to Nigel Farage, Martin, but I'll be brutally honest, I've always been on the right of the Conservative Party. The vast majority of the Reform Manifesto, 99% of it, I've agreed with for the last 10 or 20 years. So
that's a yes.
What I would say is it's certainly no surprise that when a party brings forward an authentically Conservative manifesto, small c Conservative, it attracts millions of votes and really captures the optimism of authentically Conservative people in this country.
OK, we've got to leave it there. Scott Benton, thanks for your input. Superb. Great stuff, mate. Now, I've got some breaking news for you. Premier League players will take the knee on 6 occasions this upcoming season to show their commitment in fighting racism and all forms of discrimination. More on that next. And thanks to Chris Hope. I'm Martin Daubney on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Neil Oliver, every Sunday night at 6 p.m. on GB News. And if an hour is not nearly enough for you, go to gbnews.com for special extended episodes online every Friday at 9 p.m, where we can truly get into the nitty-gritty of what's going on. GB News, Britain's news channel.
I'm Christopher Hope. From pop stars to politicians, I'll interview anybody in a pub who's got a political opinion. Join me every Friday on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, YouTube or gbnews.com, or wherever you get your podcasts. This is GB News, the People's Channel.
GB News Breakfast, every day from 6 a.m.
Fatima's UK campaign, Children and Young People Matter. Because I actually run a campaign, and my ministry today is about looking after children in the care system and improving their life outcomes. You know, for me, I had a difficult start to my childhood, and I will never forget it. I mean, I always say I may have left the care system, but the care system hasn't left me. And I instantly understand the importance of giving our young children and young people the opportunity to also, you know, have good life outcomes. So Fatima's UK campaign is all about that. And it's a summit next year. Eamon, I hope you're going to come.
No, I know we've talked about this before, and certainly, I mean, I believe in what you're doing. I think it's marvellous what you're doing, and that's why, you know, when you think about children, and children are so close to you, and you look at that horror that happened in Southport yesterday, I mean, things like that
exactly.
will really hit home hard.
Well, children are the innocent ones, aren't they, Eamon? And this is what we look at when you think they're the future. We've got to start to put them back at the top. And it's a travesty when we see things like that, you know, Omar, that happen. You know, children are the ones that are impacted. And, you know, it's, for me, you know, really important to be able to do the best we can and looking after their future. And so hopefully, you know, I'm going to the Pyrenees in September, Eamon. That's my next challenge, the Bay of Biscay from France to Spain and back. And hopefully people can go online, fatimascampaign.com, and give generously to help make a difference to these young people's lives. Because, as I say, children are the future.
GB News, the People's Channel.
We're proud to be GB News, the People's Channel. And as you know, we always love to hear your views. Now, there's a new way of getting in touch with us at gbnews.com/your-say. By commenting, you can be part of a live conversation and join our GB News community. You can even talk to me, Bev Turner, or any of the members of the GB News family.
Welcome back. It's 3:25. Now, the boxer at the centre of the Olympics gender row has launched legal action against Elon Musk and J.K. Rowling for alleged aggravated cyber harassment. But will they succeed? We'll discuss that in a bit. But now for some astonishing breaking news. And Premier League players are to take the knee on 6 occasions this season, including before this weekend's opening round of games. Well, we're joined now by the sports journalist Ben Jacobs. Ben, welcome to the show. This is quite astonishing news. Taking the knee, of course, sprang to prominence during the Black Lives Matter protests in those first post-lockdown games of 2020. Are you surprised by this?
No, because it's a continuation. Players have been taking the knee for quite some time. It's just a little bit more selective now, because the feeling was doing it every single week, which is what we saw a few years back, was diminishing almost the statement in many ways, which is all about showing solidarity and making sure that there's no discrimination in football. And the gesture and the reason before kickoff is because all eyes are on the sport at that point. All of the TV cameras are always there. You get a nice wide shot. You can see all of the players doing it. Now it's a little bit more cultured in how they want to present the gesture. First game, last game, and in addition to that, a select series of matches during a specific No Room for Racism campaign. And those games will take place in October and April. And again, we'll see it during the festive period on Boxing Day as well.
But the trouble with this gesture, Ben, is that it has been divisive on the terraces. We've seen, whether you like it or not everybody likes this. The Black Lives Matter movement itself has been widely discredited by many people. I know the FA said, no, it's not about Black Lives Matter. It's about stand up to racism. But in the eyes of many fans, it is about Black Lives Matter. That's when this started. This is what Sir Keir Starmer did after the riots. This is what the Metropolitan Police did. And socially, at the moment, with the landscape we have, Ben, what could easily happen here is that fans start booing again. They may be recorded. They may be banned for that. Is this really the right thing to be doing at the present time?
Yeah, we'll have to see what the fan reaction is. You're absolutely right to point out that the gesture means different things to different people. And of course, when we first saw it in America, it was one, for a very specific reason, and two, it was juxtaposed against the national anthem. So it wasn't just a gesture, it was a response to the national anthem and what that stands for, police brutality, and a direct reaction, therefore, taken into sport originally by Colin Kaepernick, and then Megan Rapinoe did it within football or soccer, and since then it's been more commonplace. But I suppose all the Premier League can do is point out that the gesture might appear the same and mean things to different people, but this is, as you rightly say, about combating racism and any forms of discrimination. And that's why I think we're seeing the gesture less, so it's more powerful and specifically tied into a campaign. So hopefully there is less confusion, because when it happens, it will be coupled with the very clear messaging in the Premier League and the players that it's about combating racism and discrimination.
OK, Ben Jacobs, we're going to have to leave it there. And I'm now joined by former Premier League footballer Danny Mills. Danny, welcome to the show. What do you make of this? I mean, I know that the gesture, the sentiment is that this is about kicking racism out of football. We already have an anti-racism charity in football. Show Racism the Red Card. We have lots and lots of initiatives. This taking the knee was divisive on terraces. Is this the right thing to do, to bring it back like this?
I think first and foremost, we want all discrimination, wiped out of all sport in any way that we can. I think that's really important that we keep working at that, and that's going to be a constant battle going forward. Taking the knee again, I'm not convinced it's the right way to go. I would have thought it's been, 2-3 years since this first happened now. I thought we would have moved on from this. We would have come up with something more dramatic, more powerful, more meaningful than doing this 6 times a season. We've even seen players in the past that have decided for whatever reason, and that's up to them, not to take the knee at times. I think we need something more powerful that has a bigger, a bolder statement with harsher consequences as well.
And Danny Mills, you're absolutely right, and including black players, Wilfred Zaha, of course, at Crystal Palace, Lesford, and anyone who's director of football at QPR, they both said that this sentiment was now hollow. It didn't mean anything. It had been watered out. It's becoming too divisive on the terraces, to fans. And Danny,
that would be my worry, that, you know, players now take the knee and it's just become, nobody really takes too much notice of it. You know, that is the worry within this. 6 times a year, it will happen before games. People go, oh, they're just taking the knee again. Do we really know what it stands for? Do we really know what players are standing up for? There should be a bolder, stronger, more vigorous campaign against discrimination.
And Danny, could I quickly ask you, we've just got a quick minute, the landscape that we're in at the moment, where people are being sent to prison for Facebook posts, can you see a time where fans, for example, are filmed booing, for example, on terraces, if this happens, and them getting banning orders, and this being divisive and having the opposite of its intended impact?
Yeah, I think we are in a real difficult situation in society at the moment. You know, we've got problems all over the place. Unfortunately, there are a minority of people that will use any sort of cause to make a disturbance, and they will use it as an excuse. And again, sadly, these are the people that are causing trouble, probably no matter what. No matter what the cause, you are always going to get people that find a reason to go against it, and it's an excuse. It's not really their beliefs. It's not really what they stand up for. I just think, you know, we want to eradicate all forms of discrimination in any way, shape or form. And if that means, you know, giving harsh consequences to people, then so be it.
OK, Danny Mills, it's sure to be a huge talk point. And thank you for being so honest and forthright on GB News. Always a pleasure to have your company. Thanks, mate. Now, still lots more to come between now and 4 o'clock, and stay tuned as we speak to the hero street cleaner, Paul Spires. I'm Martin Daubney on GB News, Britain's news channel. But first, it's your headlines with Tatiana Sanchez.
Martin, thank you. The top stories this hour. Ukraine's top commander says 100 Russian prisoners of war have been captured in the Kursk region. It's after Ukraine launched a surprise offensive that President Zelensky admitted was easy and met with little resistance. It comes as the Russian city of Belgorod declared a state of emergency amid daily Ukrainian shelling that the governor says is destroying homes and killing civilians. A 53-year-old woman has been jailed for admitting to sending a threatening message on Facebook in the wake of the recent riots and disorder across the country. Julie Sweeney sent the following Facebook message on August 3rd. She said, "Don't protect the mosques, blow the mosque up with the adults in it." Well, a judge has encouraged prosecutors to consider charging offenders who played central roles in the recent disorder in parts of the UK, a charge that carries a maximum sentence of 10 years. The Australian Department of Foreign Affairs has confirmed an 11-year-old girl stabbed in Leicester Square is an Australian tourist. Australian consulate officials in London are offering support to the girl's family at this time. It's also been reported the victim, who suffered 8 stab wounds to the face, neck and upper body, will likely require plastic surgery. And urgent tests are underway on a canal in the West Midlands after a sodium cyanide spill. Walsall Council said the Environment Agency told it about a toxic chemical spillage that went directly into the canal at Pleck on Monday. A major incident's been declared and people are being warned to avoid the 12-mile stretch of canal leading to Birmingham. Sodium cyanide can cause seizures, vomiting and loss of consciousness. And those are the latest GB News headlines for now. I'm Tatiana Sanchez. More from me in half an hour.
For the very latest GB News direct to your smartphone, sign up to News Alerts by scanning the QR code or go to gbnews.com/alerts.
Thank you, Tatiana. Now, if you want to get in touch with me here at GB News, especially about that breaking news, is it the right decision for footballers to once again take the knee before football matches? Then please get in touch, gbnews.com/your say. I'll read out the best of your messages a little later in the show. I'm Martin Daubney on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Hello, good afternoon. Welcome to your latest GB News weather update brought to you from the Met Office. Through the rest of the day, should stay dry for many areas. Tomorrow is looking fairly breezy with some pretty heavy rain arriving into the northwest overnight tonight. But for the rest of the day, an occluded front lies across eastern areas. That's been bringing cloudier skies here through much of the day and some drizzly rain. That risk continues through this evening, but the clouds should tend to break up and push away into the east. Behind that, clear skies for many areas of England and Wales, but across the far northwest, a band of quite blustery rain will spread into parts of Scotland and Northern Ireland by tomorrow morning. The temperatures will pick up here as well, so a milder night for northern areas, but a fresher night across the south. Temperatures much closer to where they should be across southeastern areas tonight. So a fairly bright start to the day for southern areas, but in the north, this is where we've got the heavier rain, and it's going to be quite persistent through the day, particularly across western areas, coastal areas and high ground of western areas of Scotland, as well as Northern Ireland. That rain will push down into northwestern England, particularly across Cumbria, the Lake District, seeing some very persistent rain through the day. At first, the rain will be quite light across Wales and across the east, a much brighter start tomorrow compared to today. And it should stay fairly dry and fine across central and eastern areas of England through much of the day, but it is going to be a breezier day tomorrow than today. And wetter weather, though, dominating for more northern areas. So a pretty miserable day for much of Scotland, northern England and parts of Wales. Temperatures here struggling in the mid-teens for some areas, a fresher feel arriving into the northwest later, but still, despite that breeze, temperatures climbing towards the mid-20s across the south and east. That rain will spread its way south and east into central areas of England and the southeast by Friday morning. It will turn much drier and clearer from the north and west, and that more dry weather will dominate through the weekend. Plenty of sunny spells to come and temperatures around average, if not a bit above.
The latest GB News travel.
Good afternoon, I'm Jules Buckley. The northbound M6 is struggling from junction 18 to 19. That's Middlewich up to Knutsford. A collision means a lane blocked and queued. There's one as well in Stanbridge in Bedfordshire. The A505 is currently closed both ways whilst it's being dealt with, shut between Billington Road in Stanbridge and the Shell roundabout in Leighton Buzzard. The Devon Expressway eastbound A38 blocked from Drum Bridges in Heathfield through towards the Chudley Kingstainton turn off. Very slow. There's a van fire there. Northbound A21 in East Sussex at Stream Lane in Twatlington blocked and slow. That's due to a collision. There's a breakdown westbound for the M20 in Kent. Maidstone at 6 through towards Aylesford at 5. Lane 1's coned off, it's slow. And Eurotunnel passenger services at Folkestone currently seeing waiting times of up to an hour.
You can stay up to date throughout the day by visiting our website gbnews.com.
Welcome back. Your time is 3:38. Now, finally, some good news, and don't we all need it? Because the beloved street cleaner who was denied a holiday paid for by local residents is going away on his hollybobs after all. Because people in Beckenham crowdfunded a trip for Paul Spires, only for his bosses to say that he couldn't have it. But using a loophole, a holiday company came to the rescue with the competition rigged for only one man to win. And GB News' national reporter Charlie Peters is live in Beckenham and has been sweeping the streets for the South London hero. Charlie, you found the man in question, the hero of the moment. Tell us more.
Hi there, Martin. Yes, we got in touch with Paul Spires today, and it was quite easy to find him because he's such a hub of the local community. So many people here love what he does, not only keeping their streets spotless, but bringing plenty of charm and joy as he does it. Well known for playing out Elvis Presley on a portable speaker as he goes about his work. And so appreciated is Paul Spires in Beckenham that a local fundraiser set up by Lisa Knight, a branch manager and estate agents nearby, attracted £3,000 on a GoFundMe page. It was shared on the local Facebook page. Hundreds of people chipped in. But then Paul's employer, Viola, said he couldn't take it due to rules it has with its staff and the contractual obligations it has on accepting gifts. Now, Bromley Council said that it wasn't their fault. They put the blame back on Viola, the waste management firm. The local MP, Liam Condon, he got involved, said he wanted the situation to be sorted, and eventually it was. OnTheBeach.com set up a very difficult competition. You had to be the age of 62 to 64. You had to be a street sweeper in Beckenham, and you had to love Elvis Presley. Well, Paul Spires entered this competition and he won it. And I spoke with him earlier today.
Yeah, I entered the competition and I forgot all about it, but then all of a sudden I said I've won, got a £3,000 voucher, which they're going to send me when I can go on holiday, and hopefully I'll be flying out Saturday. Yeah, well, they did say if I wanted to go 2 weeks, they'd pay me for the 2 weeks, but I'm going to try and split it, so I'll take a week now and maybe a week later on. Viola have matched that £3,000 to donated to who I have wanted nominated, and after cancer research, which they've already done, and they said it'd take about 2 or 3 days to sort out, so I'm overwhelmed with it. I'm just here to do a job to best of my ability, and the way they've reacted is brilliant, because when I first got here it was so quiet, and after 3 months I decided to buy myself a speaker. I started playing music. Everyone loved it. Everyone loves the music, so.
And you're playing a lot of Elvis when you're going around doing this weekend?
Oh yeah, Elvis and Motown. Not just Elvis, but quite a few people like Elvis, so. And my favourite one is always on my mind, but you got records like Hound Dog and Jailhouse Rock and Heartbreak Hotel and Return to Sender, Love Me Tender, all that, so.
Well, a Viola spokesperson said that Paul was able to take on this holiday because it was in his capacity as a private individual. They weren't letting him take that £3,000 fundraiser because it would count as a gift. But as you've heard from Paul himself, that £3,000 will be matched by Viola. They will donate that to a charity of his choice. That £3,000 will go to cancer research. And Paul, as early as this Saturday, could find himself on holiday with his brother in Portugal.
Is that Paul behind you in the background there, still sweeping away? I think he's still on the job, mate. But look,
that is Paul.
Yeah, it is him. See, yeah. Charlie, he can't get enough of you.
That's Paul.
Look at him, he's chatting away. This guy is a workaholic, a sweepaholic. What an absolute legend. Charlie Peters, can you please go and buy him a pint on my behalf, and I'll give you a £5 when I see you next, mate. What an absolute legend. And I was waiting for an Elvis Presley pun there.
Oh,
Charlie,
I'm sorry to disappoint, but we can now see Paul walking off with his kit.
Yeah, beautiful stuff. Now, there he goes. Now, all I could do to come up with here, and I'd appreciate if anybody can send in a better pun, any Elvis-related brush pun, all I could come up with was, so brush, little baby, don't you cry. I was told not to sing by my producer, but I did. Charlie Peters, what a wonderful story. We all need cheering up. Thank you so much for doing that, and what an absolute legend, a local legend, Paul Spears is. Thank you very, very much, Charlie Peters. Now, still lots more to come between now and 5 o'clock, and all 6 Conservative leadership hopefuls have now closed the door on the possibility of Nigel Farage joining the Conservative Party. Is this the right thing to do? Or have the party just signed their own death warrant?
Sunday with Michael Portillo from 11, only on GB News.
John Steinbeck once said of his 1939 novel The Grapes of Wrath that he intended to rip a reader's nerves to rags. Well, GB News sent its famously delicate Stephan Kyriazis to see an adaptation of the work in a London theatre, and somehow he's made it into the studio today. Give people a tiny background about The Grapes of Wrath. It's about the Depression, isn't it?
Yes, it's the Great Plains, which were absolutely ravaged by droughts. They'd completely overfarmed the topsoil, so they had all these huge dust storms, and basically the farms were worthless. So they reckon in the 1930s, about 3.5 million people left this huge central agrarian area of America, and this is a very poor, white working region. Often, many of them headed for the coast to California to this dream of orange groves, white houses, plentiful work. And we focus in on the Joad family, very poor, very working class. Tom Joad has just got out of prison for homicide in self-defence, and he's played by one of the Treadaways, Luke Treadaway, who I confused with his twin, Harry.
Understandably.
And they are identical. And so they pack everything into this kind of old-fashioned jalopy. It's a bit like Beverly Hillbillies, but not humorous. And I think there's about 13 people crammed, hanging off the sides, and they embark on this odyssey across the country. So there's all these huge themes about migration, about prejudice. They are viewed as an underclass by other Americans. So although they're migrants, they're not quite immigrants, but they're treated very poorly, as almost subhuman. When they get there, the dream turns out to be false, the pay is terrible, and then very often when they take the job the next day, the pay is halved. It's a terrible life.
It's a very angry novel.
It's an angry, dark novel.
GB News, the People's Channel.
Welcome to State of the Nation, daily plunge into the stories shaping our country. I'm Jacob Rees-Mogg, and Monday to Thursday we bring you the insights, the facts, the truth about how our country is being governed. Because what happens in Downing Street matters down your street. Tune in to State of the Nation every Monday to Thursday, 8 to 9 o'clock. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Camilla Tominey, for a frank and honest discussion with those in power that cuts through the spin and gets to the heart of the issues shaping our nation.
You haven't confirmed that you want to stand as leader, but you haven't ruled it out either.
This report basically says that he's not fit to stand trial. Is he indecisive? Incompetent? I deliver the dose of reality Westminster needs. That's the Camilla Tominey Show at 9:30 every Sunday on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Welcome back. Your time is 3:47. Now, former Prime Minister Liz Truss says the lettuce stunt at an event where she was speaking last night was not funny. We'll bring you the latest reaction on that. But first, the boxer at the centre of the Olympics' gender row has launched an astonishing legal action against Elon Musk and J.K. Rowling for alleged aggravated cyber harassment. So let's get this straight. Iman Khalif won the gold in the women's boxing despite reportedly having male XY chromosomes, and now they want to sue because they've had a bit of stick online. Welcome to 2024. Well, join me now is the former European boxing champion and the boxing pundit, Spencer Oliver. Spencer, don't pull your punches, mate. This is an absolute load of nonsense, isn't it?
Martin, I was out there in Paris, and obviously that was the eye of the storm. It was the centre of the controversy. Everyone was talking about it. It overshadowed everything else. All the great performances in the Olympics seemed to be overshadowed by Iman Khalif and Lin Yuting as well, who both failed XY chromosomes with XY chromosomes in their system in the World Championships back in 2003. They were disqualified and kicked out of there by the IBA. Now, the IBA has since been banned by the IOC, the Olympic the Olympic Committee. They have banned the IBA since then because they've been banned for alleged corruption and governance issues. So them tests have never been produced through duty of care to Iman Khalif and Lin Yuting. And this is where it gets really, really murky. So the IOC do different testing, and they don't test for whether people were biologically male or female. And the tests that they've done in the World Championships come back to show that they had biologically were males, like the XY chromosomes in their system. But obviously we have not seen those. And the controversy now is that they both went on to win gold medals in the Olympics. Should they been allowed to compete if they have XY chromosomes in their system? Well, the answer is, if they have that, then they know they definitely shouldn't be allowed to compete in a combat sport. If they're showing that their hormone levels are way above what a female boxer should really have in their system. So very, very complicated. This is all down to the IOC overruling the IBA and allowing them to box in a competition after they've been banned, in the World Championships in 2003.
And Spencer, the fact of the matter is, the entry criteria for the IOC is a passport. No medical test, no sex test, no chromosomal test, a passport. Spencer, there'd be a very, very easy way of all of this so-called bullying going away. Iman Khalif could take one of those tests and publish the results online to prove that they're a woman. This would stop overnight. Now, you and I both know that isn't going to happen anytime soon. Perhaps Imran Khalif would like to add me to the list of people that are harassing them. I don't want to harass anybody. What I want is fairness. What I want is for women not to get hurt in legalised violence. What I want is for the gold to go to an actual woman. But the prospect, Spencer, of this boxer taking on a billionaire and a millionaire, and Donald Trump has been dragged into this because Donald Trump said, I will kick men out of women's sports if I'm elected as president. The prospect of this Algerian boxer going up against three massive financial heavyweights is a one-sided scrap.
Well, absolutely. And Martin, I'm with you. You and me both, mate. We want fairness within the sport of boxing. I've always been a great advocate of that. Anyone that's seen to be taking drugs, failing drug tests, I call them out. I don't care what it is. I don't care who it is, because we're in a sport where people get hurt. Now, if these women, especially Imran Khalif, if she's showing that she's got XY chromosomes in her system, then, man, we're going into dangerous territory, because you're talking about a girl that's overproducing hormones in a combat sport like boxing that is a seriously dangerous sport anyway. So that's where the problem lies. And this is now... So I think that the problem really is with the IOC. The IBA have said they've done testing, and their testing is far deeper than the IOC's, and they've done testing, and these fighters come back with XY chromosomes in their system. So they should not be allowed to compete until this problem is sorted. The IOC have decided to overrule that. And like you say, the testing system that they do is a lot weaker. They don't test for that. So were they biologically born male or female? And that remains to be seen, because, OK, they were born, they're saying they were biologically born as women, and they have all the women's, the body of a woman, but their testing is showing that they've got XY chromosomes. So that's a big problem, mate. And it is a very grey area. And, that controversy was terrible over in the Olympics. But when Imran Khalif boxed in the final, Martin, I'll just quickly say this, the support that she had was insane.
Can I quickly ask you about the future of boxing? We've got like a minute left, Spencer, quickly. Yeah. Watching it on the telly, I felt it looked heartbreaking, especially when the Italian lady sank to her knees and was crying her eyes out after, 46 seconds of just getting battered. Can the sport salvage its reputation, or does it need to take a firm line on this and actually just have tests that we can all see?
Listen, LA 2028, boxing, Olympics without boxing would be, be a very sad day. Boxing's always been a huge part of the Olympics, produced great champions. It's the grassroots for our sport. They go, you see great champions going on and becoming brilliant world champions and iconic figures. Boxing changes lives, takes kids out of the streets, off the streets, but they need a little bit of hope, and the Olympics is that hope. Everyone wants to be an Olympian. Everyone wants to box in the Olympics. So I'm hoping that they can sort it out, because this is not to do with the boxers here. This is to do with the politics behind the scenes, the IBA, the corruption, the alleged corruption with the IBA and who's backing the IBA and, and all that sort of stuff. The IOC, the International Olympic Committee, need to sort this out for boxing. And long may boxing continue in the Olympics, because America, as we know, has a big history with boxing, and it would be a sad day if we don't get that in the sport, because boxing saves lives, takes kids off the street. We need it to continue, but we need these governing bodies to sort themselves out.
OK, we have to leave it there. Spence Oliver, impassioned, and thank you so much for joining us and being so forthright and honest on the show. Always an absolute pleasure. Thank you very, very much. Now, Tory hopeful says that riots show white working-class boys feel distance from society. This was Mel Stride. I'll be asking the big question next. Are white working-class men the most demonised demographic in society? Why do we do it? And should we instead start to listen? I'm Martin Daubney on GB News, Britain's news channel. Now it's your weather, Annie Shuttleworth.
A brighter outlook with Box Solar, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Hello, good afternoon. Welcome to your latest GB News weather update brought to you from the Met Office. Through the rest of the day, should stay dry for many areas. Tomorrow is looking fairly breezy with some pretty heavy rain arriving into the northwest overnight tonight. But for the rest of the day, an occluded front lies across eastern areas. That's been bringing cloudier skies here through much of the day and some drizzly rain. That risk continues through this evening, but the clouds should tend to break up and push away into the east. Behind that, clear skies for many areas of England and Wales, but across the far northwest, a band of quite blustery rain will spread into parts of Scotland and Northern Ireland by tomorrow morning. The temperatures will pick up here as well, so a milder night for northern areas, but a fresher night across the south. Temperatures much closer to where they should be across southeastern areas tonight. So a fairly bright start to the day for southern areas, but in the north, this is where we've got the heavier rain, and it's going to be quite persistent through the day, particularly across western areas, coastal areas and high ground of western areas of Scotland, as well as Northern Ireland. That rain will push down into northwestern England, particularly across Cumbria, the Lake District, seeing some very persistent rain through the day. At first, the rain will be quite light across Wales and across the east. A much brighter start tomorrow compared to today, and it should stay fairly dry and fine across central and eastern areas of England through much of the day, but it is going to be a breezier day tomorrow than today, and wetter weather though dominating for more northern areas, so a pretty miserable day for much of Scotland, northern England and parts of Wales. Temperatures here struggling in the mid-teens for some areas, a fresher feel arriving into the northwest later, but still, despite that breeze, temperatures climbing towards the mid-20s across the south and east. That rain will spread its way south and east into central areas of England and the southeast by Friday morning. It will turn much drier and clearer from the north and west, and that more dry weather will dominate through the weekend. Plenty of sunny spells to come and temperatures around average, if not a bit above.
That warm feeling inside from Boxed Boilers, sponsors of weather on GB News.
The latest GB News travel.
Good afternoon, I'm Jules Buckley. Let's go to the Western Bypass, the northbound A1, just near the Metro Centre. That is junction 71. Now, 2 lanes are shut. This is west of Newcastle at the scene of a collision queuing back towards the Lobley Hill interchange at junction 68. Queues for 4 miles northbound for the M6, 18 Middlewich to Knutsford 19, struggling. Lane 1 is combed off, a collision being recovered. Also on the northbound M6, but in the West Midlands this time, 5 Castle Bromwich up towards 6 Spaghetti Junction. 2 lanes are shut. Queues back to the M42 at 4A. That's due to a bump. There's queues as well southbound. Cardiff westbound M4 junction 30 to 32, a lane shutting queues. That's due to a collision. And the clockwise M25, 2 lanes shutting queues. There's been a bump at St Albans 21A.
You can stay up to date throughout the day by visiting our website gbnews.com.
You really could become the next giveaway winner with your chance to win £30,000 in tax-free cash to spend on anything you like. Listen to what some of our previous winners have to say about winning big with us.
Hi, my name's Victoria. I won the Spring Great British giveaway. So the day we got the money in our bank account, everything just felt just a lot nicer. We went out for dinner, just enter. And you never expect to win, but I did.
Get your entry in now. For another chance to win £30,000 in tax-free cash, text cash to 63232. Text costs £2 plus 1 standard network rate message. You can enter online at gbnews.com/win. Entries cost £2. Or post your name and number to GB07 PO Box 8690 Derby DE1 9TT. UK only. Entrance must be 18 or over. Lines close at 5 p.m. on the 30th of August. Please check the closing time if listening or watching on demand. Good luck.
Are the newspapers getting you down?
My wife didn't divorce me that month.
Struggling to separate the wheat from the chaff?
I know that it's a bit of a circus at the best of times.
Well, don't worry. Headliners has got you covered. We'll take the burden of reading the day's news, and if we get depressed, who cares? It's an occupational hazard, frankly. That's Headliners on GB News from 11 p.m. till midnight, and the following morning, 5 till 6 a.m. on GB News, the comedy channel. Nah, just kidding. Britain's news channel.
Hi there, I'm Michelle Dewberry and I'm going to take a second to tell you all about my show, Dubes & Co. We start off with the issues of the day. We then bring in both sides of the arguments. We get rid of the disrespect. And then you throw me into the mix. And trust me, I'll tell it exactly how it is. And then, of course, the magic ingredient, you at home. We mix it all together and what have we got, in my opinion, the best debate show in town. Monday to Friday, 6 till 7 on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Good afternoon to you. It's exactly 4 o'clock. Welcome to the Martin Daubney Show on GB News. We're broadcasting live from the heart of Westminster and all across the UK. On today's show, it's official. The future is Farage-free for the Conservative Party. Farage banned from the Tories. Today, leadership hopeful Mel Stride told GB News he is the 6th and final candidate to slam the door in Farage's face. Is this the right thing to do, or is the party over for the Tories? They're the least likely demographic to attend university, the most likely to fight for their country, and the most likely to commit suicide. Yet, they're labelled as far-right thugs whenever they have the audacity to complain. Are white, working-class men the most overlooked demographic in Britain? And did the demonisation of them help to drive the recent riots? Next up, should we bring back psychiatric hospitals? After a number of deaths at the hands of people with known serious mental health issues, including Valdo Calacane, should the public be protected from them? And breaking news from the last hour, Premier League footballers will take the knee once again starting this weekend. Is it virtue signalling? Meaningless Tosh will talk to a former top pro footballer. And the Duke of Sussex will not travel to the UK for the funeral of his uncle because of security issues. And this is ahead, of course, of a trip to Colombia, that famously wonderful, safe country. What's the show? Always a pleasure to have your company. So all 6 Tory leadership candidates have said no to Mr Nigel Farage. Is that the right thing to do? We've just heard footballers in the Premier League are to take the knee once again in the Premier League 6 times. Is that really the right thing to do? Will fans get banning orders or worse if they have the temerity to boo at football? You're sent to the clink these days for posting on Facebook. Is this really the right time to bring back taking the knee? Let me know what you think. gbnews.com/you'll say. This is your show. I'll read out the best before the end of the show today. But now it's your headlines with Tatiana Sanchez.
Martin, thank you very much and good afternoon. The top stories from the GB newsroom. Ukraine's top commander says 100 Russian prisoners of war have been captured in the Kursk region. It's after Ukraine launched a surprise offensive that President Zelensky has admitted was easy and met with little resistance. It comes as the Russian city of Belgorod has declared a state of emergency amid daily Ukrainian shelling that the governor says is destroying homes and killing civilians. Evening Standard defence editor Robert Fogg says Ukraine wants to keep the Russians guessing.
They're probing, they're pushing. Yes, you said they've got into the Kursk pocket. Zelensky admitted with great ease. They're now probing now away to the south and the east to Belgorod, which is where all this started, keeping the Russians guessing again. The game at the moment is to throw the Russians off balance for as much as possible.
The Australian Department of Foreign Affairs has confirmed an 11-year-old girl stabbed in Leicester Square is an Australian tourist. Australian consulate officials in London are offering support to the girl's family at this time. It's also been reported the victim, who suffered 8 stab wounds to the face, neck and upper body, will likely require plastic surgery. A 53-year-old woman has been jailed for admitting to sending a threatening message on Facebook in the wake of the recent riots and disorder across the UK. Julie Sweeney sent the following Facebook message on August the 3rd. She said, "Don't protect the mosques, blow the mosque up with the adults in it." A judge has encouraged prosecutors to consider charging offenders who played central roles in the recent disorder in parts of the country, a charge that carries a maximum sentence of 10 years. Reform UK leader Nigel Farage has no future in the Conservative Party, no matter who replaces Rishi Sunak as leader. That's according to Tory leadership candidate Mel Stride. Mr Stride today confirmed that he would not allow him to sit on the Conservative benches in the Commons. It means that all of the 6 candidates to replace Rishi Sunak as leader have declined to work closely with Mr Farage. The position is in contrast to Sunak, who twice told GB News last year that Farage could join the party, saying it was a broad church. Now, in the last hour or so, officials say 2 men found dead in a burned-out car in Sweden were British nationals. 33-year-old Juan Cifuentes and 37-year-old Farouk Abdul Razak were reported missing last month after failing to return home from a business trip to Denmark and Sweden. Well, Swedish prosecutors say they now have identified the remains as belonging to the 2 men. The Swedish Prosecution Authority has said relatives in the UK have been notified and its investigation into the deaths is ongoing. Violent attacks against women on British railways have more than doubled since 2021. New data shows the number of crimes against women and girls rose by 50% and the number of sexual offences jumped up by 10%. Unacceptable behaviour such as touching, upskirting or indecent exposure is being experienced by women more than ever, with 51% of female victims stating that other rail passengers intervened to try to help. Safeguarding Minister Jess Phillips says the violence against women and girls is a national emergency.
The government have made it incredibly clear that tackling the scourge of violence against women and girls is part of its core mission. We consider it to be a national emergency, and that won't just change overnight. This is going to take the levers of government working across every government department, making sure that in our education system, for example, that the attitudes that end with men on our transport systems harassing and assaulting women are dealt with at source.
In other news, urgent tests are underway on a canal in the West Midlands after a sodium cyanide spill. Walsall Council said the Environment Agency told it about a toxic chemical spillage that went directly into the canal at Pleck on Monday. A major incident's been declared and people are being warned to avoid the 12-mile stretch of canal leading to Birmingham. Sodium cyanide can cause seizures, vomiting and loss of consciousness. And the latest figures show inflation rose for the first time this year to 2.2% in the 12 months to July. Figures are up from 2% in June this year. The increase was widely predicted and is largely due to prices of gas and electricity falling by less than they did a year before. Chief Secretary to the Treasury Darren Jones said the new government is under no illusion as to the scale of the challenge we have inherited. Locals in Birmingham have been reacting to the news.
Small increase, but it's massive. Not a lot of people can already afford food. I've got a decent job myself, so I struggle as it is. So I only worry about the people on universal credit or the little part-time jobs who have to actually look after kids.
Inflation's really affecting me because I'm homeless, right? Because I'm struggling to live day by day because of inflation, right? Because to afford anything whilst you're on universal credit, it's very difficult.
And those are the latest GB News headlines for now. I'm Tatiana Sanchez. More from me in half an hour.
For the very latest GB News direct to your smartphone, sign up to news alerts by scanning the QR code or go to gbnews.com/alerts.
Thank you, Tatiana. Now, what a story we got for you here. Nigel Farage will not be allowed to join the Conservative Party, whoever replaces Rishi Sunak as leader. Speaking on Chopper's political podcast, Mel Stride has become the latest of the 6 candidates to distance himself from the Reform UK leader, claiming that his comments on the Southport attack suspect put the police in danger. So, will this fuel the comeback of the Tories, or are they signing their death warrant? Well, let's discuss this further with GB News' political editor Chris Hope, and indeed the man who did that podcast, Chopper's podcast, and the man who's got this story trending very hard on Twitter. Quite simply, Chris, 6 candidates, all 6 have said no to Nigel.
And that's interesting because it's a break from the past. So Rishi Sunak twice told me for GB News in October last year and December that the Tory party is a broad church when I said, can Nigel Farage join this party, your party? Don't forget, Farage himself was mobbed at the Tory party conference when he was a presenter, when he went to cover that conference last October as a presenter for GB News. Now, of course, he's an MP for Reform UK and the leader of that party of 5 MPs in Parliament. The big question, though, for the 6 Tories trying to replace Sunak is what to do about Farage and indeed the 4 million people who voted Reform UK at the last election, many of whom, I would say the majority of whom, are Tories who have just been left homeless by almost the leftwards lurch of the Tory party under Sunak after Liz Truss left office, of course. And that's what I think is so interesting. Why are these leaders who want to be replaced Sunak saying, well, of course I'll talk to Farage. I mean, they'll talk to anyone who's got Tory values. And is Farage a Conservative? What do you think? You're a former Brexit Party MEP.
Well, I think in his heart he is a Conservative, but I think he belongs to a Conservative emotion, a mindset which no longer exists within the party. That's the same with the voters. And the voters would like the Conservative Party to be Conservative. They would like the Conservative Party to be more Farageist, for want of a better word. This lot setting out the saw, that's not going to be the case. And I think that will say to those disaffected voters that there's no route back for them.
And that helps Farage, who's rebuilding his party from within. He's planning to put a lot of candidates up at the May elections next year. He's on a 5-year project. This story was triggered by Mel Stride. Yeah. He, of course, ran Rishi Sunak's leadership campaign when he became leader. He was a former Treasury Select Committee chairman, also Working Pension Secretary in government. He had a go at Farage, and he was talking about in the context of these killings in Southport and Farage's remarks after that when he asked on Twitter, I wonder whether the truth is being withheld from us. Here's what Mel Stride had to say.
How is it helpful when you've got police officers going out there risking their lives in a rioting situation to be questioning whether they're being truthful with the public, for example? It's likely to lead to more police officers ending up getting in more trouble than they would otherwise.
So his remarks,
so it's not responsible.
His remarks are putting the safety of police at risk.
I think his remarks about the police not being truthful, potentially, around what happened, let me put it like this, were deeply unhelpful to those officers that were then having to go out and deal with the consequence of the rioting.
Given all that, would you allow him to be a member of the Tory party if you were leader?
Absolutely not. I made that very clear. So no deals with Nigel Farage. Look, Nigel Farage wants to destroy the Conservative Party.
So, Chris Oak, to be absolutely clear, that's 2 candidates in 1 week that you've posed the same question to. Mel Stride, the viewers just heard for themselves what he had to say. Tom Tugendhat earlier this week, could Farage join? No. Simple one-word answer. Priti Patel has said Farage is a friend, but I will not allow him to destroy the Tory party. James Cleverly. Nigel Farage needs to decide if he's a serious politician or a social media content generator. That's a no. Robert Jenrick, when asked if his comments are complicated matters, he said, I don't think that they've held the situation any worse. There will be no deal with Farage. Kemi Badenoch has been blunderbuss recently in her dismissal of Farage. That's 6 out of 6. That's the full ticket. Chris Hope, you've got this story trending. There have been comments in the past from some of them, Robert Jenrick in particular, said that he might be entertaining the idea of coupling up. But this now feels like a unified position, no room at the inn.
I wonder whether this is aimed at the 120 or so Tory MPs who select the final 2 to go to the membership. Right now, there are 6 Tory MPs. That goes to 4 in the first week of September, whittled down by MPs, by the way. And then after that, goes to 2 after the party conference in early October. I wonder whether because a lot of Tory MPs are bruised by having to combat against Labour and Reform and almost lost their seats, many of them, in the election, whether they're saying this to curry favour with Tory MPs. And I wonder whether, when it goes to the membership, there might be an attempt to do a deal, show a bit of ankle, a bit of leg to party members and to Farage himself. Farage has found himself in the last campaign. All the problems were identified by the Tories: stop the boats, net migration, taxation, and only Farage had the simple answers because he knew he wouldn't have to put them into force. And so the Tories were stuck. They found the problems. Farage had the answers. The result was wipe out the election.
And would it even matter? You told me yesterday about the poll, an astonishing poll, the Ipsos poll. 62% of voters don't care who the next Conservative leader is. 36% of Conservative voters don't even care who the next leader is.
Voters last month.
Last time.
That's last month. That's not like will vote. That is last month. That is in the election a month ago. Don't care who the leader is. I was talking to a senior figure close to Keir Starmer on Monday. I had a cup of tea with him. I said, we're doing a little bit about Tory leadership because nothing else happening from the government at the moment after, thankfully, the riots have subsided. And he sort of laughed. Yeah, not my problem, mate. They're now running the country. The problem for the Tory party is rebuilding support.
And talking about a former leader of the Conservative Party, we've got a clip to show you now of Liz Truss. She was at a book launch, her book launch last night, and it was hijacked. Can we get that on screen now? She was talking away on stage. As you can see, a banner is being lowered in the background. I crashed the economy, it says. Chris Hope, as you can see, there's a lettuce with googly eyes coming down.
We've got to explain why there's a lettuce. That lettuce was the one featured in the Daily Star newspaper with googly eyes. The Star thought that she wouldn't outlast the lettuce, and of course she didn't, because she lasted in office 42 days or so. She hasn't been very funny, has she?
No, she didn't see the funny side. In fact, she tweeted this. What happened last night was not funny. Far-left activists disrupted the event and then had to be stopped for security reasons. This is done to intimidate people and suppress free speech. I won't stand for it. Would we see the same reaction if the activists were far-right?
I've got to say, Martin, I don't think that response will stop it happening. No. Because the way you stop it happening is you laugh about it. You look at Ed Miliband. He was completely traduced, had appalling time during the 2015 election, and he got through it, and he was very bruised and hurt by it, by laughing. And he finds it all a bit more amusing and takes a step back. That's how you deal with setbacks. Conor Burns, former Tory MP, has said on Twitter, it's important for politicians today to have a sense of humour. That requires self-awareness, of course.
And I'm afraid, Chris, if you can't take the stick, this will just be the tip of the iceberg. So. Now, as well as slagging Nigel Farage off, Mel Stride has come out and said that the recent riots show that white working-class lads feel distanced from society, a sentiment I very much concur with. And to discuss this now, I'm joined by Sir Philip Davis, a former Tory MP for Shipley, and I know a tireless advocate for men's issues throughout your political career. In fact, I want to start us off by saying thank you, Philip Davis, for that debate you chaired on International Men's Day in 2015. Seems like a long time ago now, mate. When our paths first crossed, very, very few people were prepared to take that battle into wicket, and you did. Back to the case in point. Mel Stride, I think, is talking something here of sense. He's identified an issue. We're not justifying what happened, the riots, but there is this feeling, is there not, Philip Davis, that we have a community in the white working class that feel ostracised, they feel ignored, and when they have the temerity to reply, they're called far-right thugs. Is it about time we started listening rather than demonising these communities?
Yeah, well, to be honest, Martin, you've done a huge amount in this field as well. So thank you for what you've done over many, many years, long before your time at GB News. Yes, I mean, look, you're right. We've got to decouple the two things. The people who engaged in the riots were mindless thugs and quite rightly are being sent to prison. And I'm sure many of them are have previous criminal convictions. We're not trying to excuse what happened or justify what happened. I'm certainly not. Anyway, what happened was outrageous, and those people should be properly punished. But yes, there is definitely an issue in terms of the white working class, in particular white working class men, who do feel ostracised from society to a large extent. They do feel ostracised by politicians. Nobody ever seems to be really speaking up for them. And let's not forget that if you go through a whole range of issues, whether it's educational standards or employment or whatever, the people who are doing worst in this country are white working class males. And yet in Parliament, you have loads of debates in Parliament where people are speaking up for ethnic minorities and they're speaking up for women's issues and all the rest of it. And they feel that nobody's speaking up for them. And in a parliamentary democracy, if people feel that nobody in Parliament is speaking up for them, then that's when people either vote for extremist parties or they don't vote at all and they don't take part in the democratic process. It's absolutely crucial that people in Parliament speak up for all segments of society, and the people who seem to miss out all the time are white working class men.
And it's ironic that Jess Phillips has been piping up today, because Jess Phillips is the one who rolled her eyes at the mention of the fact that male suicide was the biggest killer, and she was the one that actually propagated that debate in Parliament back in 2015. But the stats are the stats, the facts are the facts, Philip Davis. White working class men are the least likely to attend university. They obtain the lowest educational outcomes from reception all the way through. After that, they're the most likely to commit suicide. Labourers, working class men left on the scrap heap. They have few political allies. They're the most likely to have voted for Brexit, and yet they had that vote stomped upon by the political class, the elite, and by the media. Their occupations were hollowed out by cheap labour, first European Union labour, the Polish builders and whatnot that came across, and now the immigration from the non-EU countries. Philip Davis, will this ever change?
Well, I hope so. It's got to change, to be perfectly honest. And I think things have changed over the last few years since I managed to secure that first debate in Parliament. The tone has changed an awful lot in Parliament, and I'm very pleased about that. And those debates now have become an annual fixture in the House of Commons, and I hope that will continue into the future. Look, Jess Phillips's point was always that, well, there's loads of men in Parliament, so there isn't an issue. And the point I was making was that there was a difference between men speaking in Parliament and people speaking about men's issues, which very rarely get raised. And there's very rarely an opportunity to raise them in Parliament. You know, we have women and equalities questions, but we don't have any similar time for those issues that affect white working class men to be talked about. We have people speak up for criminals all the time. Nobody speaks up for law-abiding people. Who speaks up for a law-abiding white working class man in the political system? They're very, very few and far between. And so if we want those people to engage in the democratic process, then they've got to feel that people in the democratic process are speaking up for them. And I think the point is, Martin, we've got to stop this identity politics. We've got to stop this thing about saying about, you know, white privilege and men are dominant over women and all this thing. That isn't the, if you're a white working class guy in a poor part of the country, you don't feel very privileged at all. And having politicians telling you that you're privileged is not really helping anybody.
Philip, I'm with in the studio here with Martin, Chris Hope. Just quick, I'll ask you a question about Nigel Farage. Do you think he's a Tory?
Yeah, I think deep down he is a Tory. But look, the point that the six leadership contenders have made here, Chris, isn't really surprising. I mean, we've just had a general election where many people in Reform have said that their stated ambition is to wipe out the Conservative Party. And to be perfectly frank, I mean, I don't know about you, but can you really see Nigel Farage playing second or third fiddle to a Conservative leader at the moment? I mean, it's just not going to happen, is it? So the idea that the Conservatives and Reform were going to merge was always a fanciful idea. But the point is that that's for now. Who's to say what's going to happen in the future? In a first-past-the-post system, the right have to unite, or else they will hand the elections over to the Labour Party forever. So whether or not that means that at future elections there's some kind of electoral understanding where, you know, the Conservative Party stand aside for Reform in some seats and Reform stand aside for the Conservatives in some seats, who knows? These types of things, but there has to be some kind of unification. But for the time being, the priority for any Conservative leader is to set their stall out, be more conservative, and hopefully that will in itself help to unite the right. Are you by saying I'm going to join with Nigel?
Philip, are you saying there then that these candidates are doing this to try and get the support of other MPs, and that when it goes to the membership in October, these candidates might try and show a bit of leg to Farage and try and win around it and say we can work more closely with Reform UK?
No, I don't think so. Like I say, it's at the moment it's inevitable that they're two separate parties. Nigel Farage isn't going to play third fiddle to a Tory leader under any circumstances. So it's irrelevant. It's not going to happen. What all the new Conservative leader has to do, whoever they may be, is to set out the Conservative vision based on timeless Conservative values of individual freedom, individual responsibility, low taxes, strong defence, strong on law and order, tough on immigration. Get their stall set out in that regard. And then over time, who knows what might happen? If people see that the Conservative Party are more conservative and are back to those timeless Conservative values, then that's the best way to unite the right in the long run. Pretending we can do a merger in 10 minutes flat, that it's just not realistic. It's not going to happen.
OK, so Philip Davis, thank you for joining us on the show, talking about the white working classes and also the Conservatives' ongoing Nigel Farage problem. Always a pleasure. You take care. Cheers. Now, the Premier League players will take the knee on 6 occasions this season to show their commitment to fighting racism. Is this meaningless virtue signalling tosh? You tell me at gbnews.com/your say. I'm Martin Daubney on GB News, British News Channel.
I'm Christopher Hope. From pop stars to politicians, I'll interview anybody in a pub who's got a political opinion. Join me every Friday on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, YouTube or gbnews.com, or wherever you get your podcasts. This is GB News, the People's Channel.
I'm Michelle Dewberry, and this is GB News, Britain's news channel.
GB News Breakfast, every day from 6 a.m.
Well, we're joined this morning by the broadcaster Paula London, who thinks we shouldn't allow flexible working, and the founder of Real Mums Club, Chrissy Powell, who thinks that it is an absolutely brilliant idea. Let's start with you, Chrissy, because nobody is suggesting for a minute, are they, that being a parent isn't a job?
Parenting a job itself, but I think flexible working, where it really comes into play, is it provides a gateway for those parents that currently cannot work. It provides them a gateway into the working world. I think it's a fantastic idea, and I think every single employer should look into that as an option.
It's a fantastic idea, Chrissy, unless you're an employer. I would have thought you can't get people through sickness, through holiday, through when they want to work and when they don't want to work. Why even bother thinking about working? Why not just get paid for sitting at home doing nothing?
Because flexibility isn't just about term time only contracts. I myself, as a working mum, having a flexible employer, it means that I can still continue my work duties when children are ill. Recently, my daughter had a huge allergic reaction. It resulted into an A&E trip. If that wasn't a flexible employee, it would mean I'd have to have time off. Whether that's paid or unpaid, it can be detrimental to the employer and the employee. So by allowing me to work from home and offering more flexibility, employers offer different time scales. So it doesn't always mean that you have to work a 9 to 5 anymore. It might mean that you're best suited to work later on in the evening and pick up your work that way. I just think it's fantastic.
GB News, the People's Channel.
We're proud to be GB News, the People's Channel. And as you know, we always love to hear your views. Now, there's a new way of getting in touch with us at gbnews.com/your say. By commenting, you can be part of a live conversation and join our GB News community. You can even talk to me, Bev Turner, or any of the members of the GB News family.
Every Saturday, 10 till 12, we'll bring you all of the news that you need to know. We'll also remind you that there is so much to smile about.
It's my favourite time of the week. I get to relax, enjoy some light-hearted stories, and let Ellie teach me about fashion too.
That's Saturday Morning Live, every Saturday, 10 till 12.
Only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Welcome back. Your time is 4:27 now. Breaking news from earlier in the programme. Premier League players will take the knee on 6 occasions this forthcoming football season, including before this weekend's opening round of games. Players are planning to show their commitment to fighting racism and all forms of discrimination. Now I'm joined by the former footballer and Liverpool fan, Mickey Quinn, the absolute legend, who joins me now on the phone. Mickey, welcome to the show. I used to edit Loaded magazine. We worshipped you then, and you're an absolute star of the game, past, present, and now you're also a legend on the radio. Can I ask you, do you think this is the right thing to do, Mickey, or should this thing be put to one side now? This was relevant in 2020. Is it still relevant today?
You know what? It's a fantastic question. I think it's always relevant, Martin, in regards to it highlights racism again. I mean, but I can take you back to the early 80s when I was a kid playing in football. You know, John Barnes, he was having bananas thrown at him. Gazza was having Mars bars thrown at him. There was discrimination all over. And we had various campaigns then, 1996, show racism, the red card. We would wear T-shirts, stop racism. right up to modern day with taking the knee. I mean, I thought that was all gone last season, but obviously it was brought back in some cup games. Some players did it, some players didn't. Yes, anything that highlights racism has got to be a good thing, a positive thing. But is it working, Martin? That's the question we've got to ask. Is it working? When I see England players in Bulgaria, getting slated by Bulgarian fans that are black players. I see racism in Spain. Vinicius Junior walking off the pitch. It's got to be across the board. It's got to be across the board. And to me, the only solution, Martin, is for players to down tools and walk off the pitch. That is the only thing that's going to solve this problem.
Mickey, you raise a great point, but if we can try and pull apart the two things, if we can, nobody wants racism in football. It's a disease. It should be kicked out. And you're right to highlight the fact it's far, far worse. Kingdom, mercifully so. We've made great strides on that front. But the signal of taking the knee, Mickey, is associated with Black Lives Matter. The FA can say that it isn't about that anymore. It's about stand up to racism. But fans up and down the land think it is to do with Black Lives Matter. And we saw the riots in London in the name of Black Lives Matter. We saw the Prime Minister, Keir Starmer, taking the knee to Black Lives Matter. We saw the Metropolitan Police. And in the light, the social fabric, Mickey, of where we are at the moment with all these riots, and we're seeing people go to prison for Facebook posts or for saying the wrong thing. Mickey, you know football fans as well as I do. Some of them, we can like it or lump it, but some of them will probably boo when players take the knee. Mickey, they could be recorded doing that. They could face bans. They could face worse. So I put it to you, in this environment, is this the right time to be bringing back taking the knee?
I don't think it should be every game of football. And basically, you just said some fans are not comfortable with it. Some fans think it's an American issue, which we know it's not. It's far deeper than that. It is about racism. But if you the Premier League made a statement today. If they came out and said this is purely about racism and, the fight against racism, I think it would clarify a few things, Martin, wouldn't you? Because, like you said, a lot of working class football supporters just think it is an American, a Black Lives Matter campaign, and it's nothing to do with our Premier League in this country. So I think, the Premier League got to clarify that. So each football fan knows exactly it is about fighting racism in America, in Europe, in this country, all around the world. There's no room for it, especially in sport. People, footballers going to work, they don't want to be, berated with racist comments. It's just, it's sickening, really. And, to me, the only solution, which will affect everybody, is for players to walk off. You can bend on the knee, you can have your T-shirts, you can have, the gimmicks, everything on football shirts. You can have the lot. And it does highlight racism and it will bring awareness. But for me, just walk off the pitch. Just walk off the pitch and that'll solve a lot of problems because football fans will suffer because they won't be able to watch the game and our Premier League's watched round the world. So it'll make a massive statement.
OK, Mickey Quinn, thank you for being so forthright. Thanks for joining me. Thanks for what you did in the game and afterwards. Absolute legend, Mickey Quinn. Thanks for your thoughts, as ever. Cheers, mate. Now, there's lots more still to come between now and 4 o'clock, and I'm asking whether it's time to bring back secure psychiatric hospitals to make Britain safe again. I'm Martin Daubney on GB News, Britain's news channel. But now to your headlines with Tatiana Sanchez.
Martin, thank you. The top stories from the GB newsroom. Ukraine's top commander says 100 Russian prisoners of war have been captured in the Kursk region. It's after Ukraine launched a surprise offensive that President Zelensky has admitted was easy and met with little resistance. It comes as the Russian city of Belgorod has declared a state of emergency amid daily Ukrainian shelling that the governor says is destroying homes and killing civilians. The Australian Department of Foreign Affairs has confirmed an 11-year-old girl stabbed in Leicester Square is an Australian tourist. Australian consulate officials in London are offering support to the girl's family. It's also been reported the victim, who suffered 8 stab wounds to the face, neck and upper body, will likely require plastic surgery. A woman has been jailed for admitting to sending a threatening message on Facebook in the wake of the recent riots and disorder across the UK. 53-year-old Julie Sweeney sent the following Facebook message on the 3rd of August. She said, "Don't protect the mosques, blow the mosque up with the adults in it." Well, a judge has encouraged prosecutors to consider charging offenders who played central roles in the recent disorder in parts of the country, a charge that carries a maximum sentence of 10 years. Officials say 2 men found dead in a burned-out car in Sweden were British nationals. 33-year-old Juan Cifuentes and 37-year-old Farouk Abdulrazak were reported missing last month after failing to return home from a business trip to Denmark and Sweden. Swedish prosecutors say they've now identified the remains as belonging to the 2 men. The Swedish Prosecution Authority has said relatives in the UK have been notified and its investigation into the deaths is ongoing. And urgent tests are underway on a canal in the West Midlands after a sodium cyanide spill. Walsall Council said the Environment Agency told it about a toxic chemical spillage that went directly into the canal at Plec on Monday. A major incident's been declared and people are being warned to avoid the 12-mile stretch of canal leading to Birmingham. Sodium cyanide can cause seizures, vomiting and loss of consciousness. Those are the latest GB News headlines for now. I'm Tatiana Sanchez. More from me in half an hour.
For the very latest GB News direct to your smartphone, sign up to News Alerts by scanning the QR code or go to gbnews.com/alerts.
Thank you, Tatiana. Now, if you want to get in touch with me at GB News, simply go to gbnews.com/your say. I read out the best comments before the end of the show. In particular, should footballers be taking the knee? I'm Martin Daubney on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Hello, good afternoon. Welcome to your latest GB News weather update brought to you from the Met Office. Through the rest of the day, should stay dry for many areas. Tomorrow is looking fairly breezy with some pretty heavy rain arriving into the northwest overnight tonight. But for the rest of the day, an occluded front lies across eastern areas. That's been bringing cloudier skies here through much of the day and some drizzly rain. That risk continues through this evening, but the clouds should tend to break up and push away into the east. Behind that, clear skies for many areas of England and Wales, but across the far northwest, a band of quite blustery rain will spread into parts of Scotland and Northern Ireland by tomorrow morning. The temperatures will pick up here as well, so a milder night for northern areas, but a fresher night across the south. Temperatures much closer to where they should be across southeastern areas tonight. So a fairly bright start to the day for southern areas, but in the north, this is where we've got the heavier rain, and it's going to be quite persistent through the day, particularly across western areas, coastal areas and high ground of western areas of Scotland, as well as Northern Ireland. That rain will push down into northwestern England, particularly across Cumbria, the Lake District, seeing some very persistent rain through the day. At first, the rain will be quite light across Wales and across the east. A much brighter start tomorrow compared to today, and it should stay fairly dry and fine across central and eastern areas of England through much of the day, but it is going to be a breezier day tomorrow than today, and wetter weather though dominating for more northern areas, so a pretty miserable day for much of Scotland, northern England and parts of Wales. Temperatures here struggling in the mid-teens for some areas, a fresher feel arriving into the northwest later, but still, despite that breeze, temperatures climbing towards the mid-20s across the south and east. That rain will spread its way south and east into central areas of England and the southeast by Friday morning. It will turn much drier and clearer from the north and west, and that more dry weather will dominate through the weekend. Plenty of sunny spells to come and temperatures around average, if not a bit above.
The latest GB News travel.
Good afternoon, I'm Jules Buckley. Queues for the M6 and a few spots northbound at the moment. A 6-mile queue, a lane shut 18 Middlewich up towards Knutsford 19. There's a breakdown there. The queue's back to Sandbach and Crewe at 17. Also northbound in the West Midlands, 2 lanes are out junction 5 to 6. That's from Castle Bromwich up towards Spaghetti Junction. A collision means queues back to Coles Hill at 4. It's also slow on the other side back towards Great Bar at 7 southbound. Queues around Cardiff in South Wales, westbound M4, the lane 1, a closure still in place, junction 30 to 32 around Cardiff at the scene of a collision. 3 lanes shut clockwise M25, St Albans 21A towards 22, queues back to 21 for a bump there, and queuing London bound for the M20, heading towards the M26 at junction 3.
You can stay up to date throughout the day by visiting our website, gbnews.com.
Welcome back. Your time is 4:39 now. A review has found that Mental Health Trust had 8 chances to prevent Valdo Calacane killing 3 people in Nottingham, my home city, last year. Medics lost track of the paranoid schizophrenic, even though a psychiatrist warned that he might end up killing someone. And this begs the very, very simple question. If we still had secure psychiatric hospitals where patients could be committed for a prolonged period of time, well, could all this have been avoided? It's time for a debate now, and I'm joined by the political commentator Stephen Carlson-Woods, who says that they're not the answer. While in the studio, I'm sat with the political commentator Alex Armstrong, who says that they are needed to protect the public. Can I kick off with you, Alex? Tell me, why do you think we do need secure units for the mentally unwell?
Well, your preamble just got it nailed on the head there, Martin. We had somebody who committed 3 murders, who could have been stopped 3 years prior to those heinous acts on the streets of Nottingham, and that would have been the psychiatrist who recommended that he get some professional help. Now, what happens is that they have nowhere to go after this. They have no powers to stop these potentially criminal people who are a danger to society, and these psychiatric hospitals that have been closed, obviously systematically over decades now, were a preventative measure for those things. Now we don't have them, but we're seeing this massive rise in knife crime across the UK when it comes to mental health issues. We've got stats that show 30 to 40% of young knife crime offenders could be stopped, and they all suffer with mental health issues. 10% of all knife crime-related violence is committed with 10% of them are suffering with mental health issues as well, Martin. So this is a really big problem. We've got to solve the symptom of these problems, and we can't just keep ignoring them and them getting to court and then them saying, sorry, this person's got mental health issues, we need to let them off. It's doing an injustice to our society.
Stephen Carlson-Woods, I was joined on the show yesterday, a very, very moving guest, Julian Hendy, the founder of a charity, 100 Families. His father was knifed to death in 2007, 75-year-old father, going to the paper shop. He told me an astonishing statistic. Up to 120 Brits are killed every single year by people with mental health conditions. Isn't the answer? They shouldn't be roaming around the streets in the community. They should be, for everybody's protection, including their own, to be placed in a secure unit. Stephen?
Well, let's just examine the current situation. We do have specialist mental health units in hospitals across the country. So we do have provision there at the moment. And people get sectioned under the Mental Health Act of 1983. And that's where the problem lies, because that's outdated. We need a new Mental Health Act. We need new guidance. And people need to be clear on what's going on. There's been too many errors of judgment with the cases you've just highlighted. That needs to be brought into line very quickly.
Valdo Calacane was sectioned 4 times. This happened to him 4 times. He'd wandered off and disengaged with the mental health services of his own accord and went on to kill. So what we have now, Stephen, isn't working.
Well, exactly, I agree with that. But the thing is, different health authorities interpret the rules in different ways, and I think the guidance is really unclear. And if you've got an element of ethnic minorities in the background, that changes the whole dynamic of it all as well. So I think we need clear guidance for the people that are dealing with all this on a day-to-day basis, and we need the Mental Health Act of 2024 now, and bring it up to date.
The problem we've got, though, is that we politicians, time and time again, saying they're going to tackle knife crime. We're not actually doing anything about it. What we're doing is putting stop and search on the streets, which I agree we should do more of. But you've got Labour politicians like Sadiq Khan who want to do less of those things. They're preventative measures. And yes, of course, only a small percentage of these knife crimes are related to mental health issues. And so I do think we need to revisit things like the Mental Health Act for sure. But what are we going to do in the long term? Because I've been to see mental health facilities. They are overrun. They're shoddy, they're not secure, and they're not really rehabilitating people. In a lot of cases, they're just drugging them up to keep them quiet. Yeah. Where are we going to get to with this?
Well, there is provision in place for police officers to actually suggest someone going into a safe space in a hospital, into a psychiatric unit, for an interim period. Then the specialists come and make the decisions on that. So there is powers in place at the moment, but I think they're being interpreted completely wrong, and there's different reasons for that in the mix.
Yeah,
go on.
No, I was just going to say, and of course, I mean, I've actually seen a lot of these social services at work, and they take forever. So once you get recommended to a police officer, how long are we talking? Months, years?
Yeah. Well,
the whole system is crumbling, is it not?
Yeah. All these services are all disjointed. They don't really work together in harmony. So someone might go and see a mental health advisor, and they might need another specialist piece of help. And that could take months before they get to see that person. This whole thing, bringing together and the rules rewriting and bring it up to date.
Stephen, if I could have it my way, I'd stop having police officers scouring the internet for people writing offensive memes, and I'd put them to work dealing with things like this.
And it's worth pointing out that yesterday we pointed out on the show £6.6 billion now being spent on our asylum system. Last year, that went up by a huge amount. And if we can find billions of pounds for that, gentlemen, both of you, surely we can find money to deal with an absolute cancer at the heart of society. How many more people need to be killed before this changes?
You've hit the nail on the head there. All the wastage, or we're running around chasing shadows, not dealing with the problem properly, and throwing millions and millions of pounds into it. We need to get the basics right first.
OK, final word to you, Alex. You've got a quick 30 seconds.
Yeah, look, I mean, I think mental health provisions across the UK have been destroyed over the last 30, 40 years, and I would like to see them be much tougher. I'd like to see the rules of these unfortunate murderers, even if they are sectioned under the Mental Health Act, to actually be stronger, show a deterrence in the law for anybody committing these crimes, even if they are mentally unwell. Unfortunately, at the moment, we're not going to fix this by building more hospitals in the short term. So what do we need? We need tougher laws for anybody committing knife crime across the UK.
Thank you, Alex Armstrong, and thank you. We have to leave it there. Stephen Colton was. Gentlemen, superb debate as ever. Thank you both for joining us on the show. Now, Prince Harry is scared to come back to Britain, apparently, for fear of knife and acid attacks, and that's why he's off to that famously safe country of Colombia. More on that next. I'm Martin Daubney on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Good afternoon, Britain.
Your lunchtime update on the stories that matter across the UK.
From breaking news and insightful analysis, inspiring stories and lively debates. Are you comparing yourself to a former Prime Minister?
Which is it? Stay informed, stay updated, stay entertained.
I just don't know how anyone would not want to be there.
Every weekday from midday.
We are Good Afternoon Britain, only on GB News.
Britain's news channel.
This is GB News, Britain's news channel.
This is a big old headache because we talk a lot about GP appointments, don't we? But certainly almost everyone I know struggles to see a dentist when they need one.
Yes.
You know the best time to go to a dentist? 2:30. 2:30.
That's actually quite good. It's better than my gags.
The guy that went into Goa, to India, to get his dental treatment, is that what you're talking about?
Well, yeah, so tell us about that. I mean, this is how desperate people are to get treatment now. So what's the story?
OK, the story is a guy couldn't get an appointment at the NHS, so he went all the way to Goa in India to get his dental appointment. Now, I think he probably just wanted to go on holiday, and he thought, I know, why don't I go on holiday to Goa and then get my teeth done? Look, people are travelling in their droves. There's whole aeroplanes full of people with medical tourists. Like in Turkey, you get a whole aeroplane with people with hair implants and things like that.
Well,
yeah. I was going to go to
turkey teeth, isn't it?
Turkey teeth.
Turkey teeth. Well, now
that's when they strip the tooth down and you have these little pegs.
Yes, they strip them down, but in many cases they strip them down far too low, so the nerve is exposed and it gets infected, and it's exposed to the elements. So you get infection in the tooth, and then you have to essentially take them all off. But by then the infection spreads so far. I was getting my nails done the other day, which I don't do very often, and my nail technician said to me, "Is your dad still a dentist?" And I said, "Yes." And she said, "Please, can I have an emergency appointment? I went to Turkey and I got my teeth done, and now they look incredible, but I'm in so much pain. They're all infected." She had 15 taken out from the top and 12 from the bottom, and it's an absolute disaster. But this is what people are feeling like they have to do.
So medical tourism doesn't always work.
No, but it shows, doesn't it, Alex, that people can't get their teeth sorted here, so they go elsewhere. Listen, do you floss, by the way?
Don't floss.
GB News, the People's Channel.
Welcome to State of the Nation, daily plunge into the stories shaping our country. I'm Jacob Rees-Mogg, and Monday to Thursday we bring you the insights, the facts, the truth about how our country is being governed. Because what happens in Downing Street matters down your street. Tune in to State of the Nation every Monday to Thursday, 8 to 9 o'clock. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Welcome back. It's 4:49. I'm Martin Daubney on GB News. Now, Prince Harry will not be coming home for the funeral of his uncle, Lord Fellows, as he said that without the guarantee of police protection, it's simply too dangerous. He apparently fears a knife or an acid attack, and instead he'll be travelling to somewhere much, much safer, Colombia. And that's with his wife, Meghan, of course, on their upcoming royal tour. Now, joining me now is the GB News royal correspondent, Cameron Walker. Cameron, before we get into the fact that Colombia is hardly a crime-free paradise, tell us about why Harry isn't coming back to the funeral of his uncle.
Yeah, a bit surprising, to be honest, Martin. Lord Fellows died last month at the age of 82. Lord Fellows' widow, Lady Jane Fellows, she was the sister of Diana, Princess of Wales, and therefore Lord Fellows is the uncle of both Prince William and Prince Harry, somebody who was very close to both of them. And yet I understand Prince Harry has decided not to come back to the United Kingdom for that funeral. We don't know when it is, but we do know clearly it's coming. It's up and coming. Prince Harry, I understand that Prince Harry's security arrangements is the main issue here. He claims, as we know, it's widely known, that to come back to the UK, he needs to give the Home Office 28 days notice so they can arrange for necessary security arrangements. Prince Harry thinks that's unfair. That's why he has lodged another appeal in the Court of Appeal to try and get that ruling overturned by the Home Office committee, who downgraded his security when he stood back as a working member of the royal family. So that's why he's decided not to come back. But I think there's another elephant in the room here, and that is the fact that Prince William is expected to be at the funeral. And we know for the last 3 years or so, Prince Harry and Prince William have not been on speaking terms. That royal feud still running rife. I suspect that every family gathering that we've had over the last few years has been a little bit awkward, to say the least. Clearly, this is a private family funeral, so there wouldn't be this expectation that media cameras or journalists would be present. But even so, it does have the danger of overshadowing the whole thing if the two of them are in the room at the same time. Because instead of talking about the legacy of Lord Fellows, who was also the former private secretary to Queen Elizabeth II, everyone's going to be talking about Prince William and Harry's feud. And that is perhaps why Prince Harry also decided not to go to the Duke of Westminster's wedding last month, where Prince William acted as an usher.
And it's worth pointing out that Colombia is the 18th most dangerous country in the world for homicide. In fact, it's one of the most dangerous countries in all for criminality and violence in all of Latin America and the world. And in fact, Cameron, you're 22 times more likely to be killed in Colombia than you are in the United Kingdom. Yet, of course, he's happy to go there.
Yeah, and the British Foreign Office and the US equivalent both advise citizens against all but essential travel to certain parts of that country. Granted, Harry and Meghan are not going to those parts. They're going to the capital as well as a couple of the regions on the coast of Colombia. So I am assured they're going to have a full security protection at all times. Of course, it's an official visit because it's the government of Colombia that has invited Harry and Meghan to experience the culture and tackle online safety and violence against children and all the rest of it. So I suspect the Colombian government is going to be providing some level of security to the royal couple, or non-royal couple, whichever way you want to look at it. And I suspect their own separate private US team is going to have more jurisdiction than they would do in the United Kingdom, because in the UK, they're not allowed to carry firearms, they don't have access to the intelligence. So that is Prince Harry's arguments. But yes, some people are pointing out that hypocrisy in terms of Colombia and the United Kingdom, and whether or not Prince Harry feels comfortable or safe bringing his wife Meghan to the United Kingdom, but he is comfortable bringing her to Colombia.
Thank you very much for joining us, Cameron Walker. Always an absolute pleasure. Thank you. Now, before we end this hour, we've had hundreds of your says coming in, and lots of them, of course, are about the announcement that the Premier League players will be taking the knee at 6 matches. Ian says this: taking the knee was originally a sign of disrespect to the USA, signalling the refusal to stand for the national anthem. Let's kick it out of our sport. Martin says this: I'm going to the first football match this season at Manchester United, and I will not be taking the knee, and I will not even stand up for any of it. I will boo because I don't agree with it whatsoever. This nonsense should be kicked out of the game. And Dave here says the only way that this will stop is by stopping going to the football. This is so 2024, and at the moment I think fans might get arrested for booing. So there you go, you've spoken. Now stick around because the Tories have barred Farage from the party. Let's get all the latest reaction from that. I'm Martin Daubney on GB News, Britain's News Channel. Now your weather with Annie Shudworth.
That warm feeling inside from Boxed Boilers, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Hello, good afternoon. Welcome to your latest GB News weather update brought to you from the Met Office. Through the rest of the day, should stay dry for many areas. Tomorrow is looking fairly breezy with some pretty heavy rain arriving into the northwest overnight tonight. But for the rest of the day, an occluded front lies across eastern areas. That's been bringing cloudier skies here through much of the day and some drizzly rain. That risk continues through this evening, but the clouds should tend to break up and push away into the east. Behind that, clear skies for many areas of England and Wales, but across the far northwest, a band of quite blustery rain will spread into parts of Scotland and Northern Ireland by tomorrow morning. The temperatures will pick up here as well, so a milder night for northern areas, but a fresher night across the south. Temperatures much closer to where they should be across southeastern areas tonight. So a fairly bright start to the day for southern areas, but in the north, this is where we've got the heavier rain, and it's going to be quite persistent through the day, particularly across western areas, coastal areas and high ground of western areas of Scotland, as well as Northern Ireland. That rain will push down into northwestern England, particularly across Cumbria, the Lake District, seeing some very persistent rain through the day. At first, the rain will be quite light across Wales and across the east. A much brighter start tomorrow compared to today, and it should stay fairly dry and fine across central and eastern areas of England through much of the day, but it is going to be a breezier day tomorrow than today, and wetter weather though dominating for more northern areas, so a pretty miserable day for much of Scotland, northern England and parts of Wales. Temperatures here struggling in the mid-teens for some areas, a fresher feel arriving into the northwest later, but still, despite that breeze, temperatures climbing towards the mid-20s across the south and east. That rain will spread its way south and east into central areas of England and the southeast by Friday morning. It will turn much drier and clearer from the north and west, and that more dry weather will dominate through the weekend. Plenty of sunny spells to come and temperatures around average, if not a bit above.
Looks like things are heating up. Boxed Boilers, sponsors of weather on GB News.
The latest GB News travel.
Good afternoon. Hello again. I'm Jules Buckley. There's some queues for the M6 in a couple of spots this afternoon northbound. Firstly, Castle Bromwich, Junction 5 up towards Spaghetti Junction at 6. Now, 2 lanes are out. A collision causing queues back to Coleshill at Junction 4. It's also causing traffic to slow down southbound. That queues back to Great Barr at 7. Queuing northbound to around 18 at Middlewich following an earlier breakdown, but all lanes are back open. Queues around Cardiff in South Wales, westbound M4. The inside lanes out. Junction 30 to 32, heavy at the scene of a bump there. There's queues for the M25, both sides of it. Firstly, around Dartford 1B, long delays following an earlier police incident. On the clockwise side, St Albans 21A towards 22, 2 lanes are shut. Queues back to Kings Langley at 20 due to an accident.
You can stay up to date throughout the day by visiting our website gbnews.com.
Celebrate a spectacular summer with your chance to win an incredible £30,000 in tax-free cash in our Great British Giveaway. It's the biggest prize of the year so far, and it's totally tax-free. What would you spend that on? Luxury holidays, a new car, or just put it away for a rainy day? Whatever you do with £30,000 in tax-free cash, make sure you don't miss out on a chance to make it yours. For another chance to win £30,000 in tax tax-free cash, text cash to 63232. Text costs £2 plus one standard network rate message. You can enter online at gbnews.com/win. Entries cost £2 or post your name and number to GB07 PO Box 8690 Derby DE1 9TT. UK only. Entrance must be 18 or over. Lines close at 5 p.m. on the 30th of August. Please check the closing time if listening or watching on demand. Good luck.
I'm Patrick Christie's. Every weeknight from 9, I bring you 2 hours of unmissable, explosive debate and headline-grabbing interviews. What impact has that had?
We got death threats and the bomb threat and so on.
As time passes,
She could have said Stump.
you made my argument for me.
My guests and I tackle the issues that really matter with a sharp take on every story.
Went everywhere.
Something practical could be done.
Or I can become something different. Patrick Christie's tonight from 9 p.m. only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Are the newspapers getting you down?
My wife didn't divorce me that month.
Struggling to separate the wheat from the chaff?
I know that it's a bit of a circus at the best of times.
Well, don't worry. Headliners has got you covered. We'll take the burden of reading the day's news, and if we get depressed, who cares? It's an occupational hazard, frankly. That's Headliners on GB News from 11 p.m. till midnight, and the following morning, 5 till 6 a.m. on GB News, the comedy channel. Nah, just kidding. Britain's news channel.
A very, very good afternoon to you. It's 5 p.m. and welcome to the Martin Daubney Show on GB News. We're broadcasting live from the heart of Westminster, all across the UK. On today's show, well, that's it. It's official. The future is Farage-free for the Conservative Party. Today, leadership hopeful Mel Stride told GB News he is the 6th and final candidate to slam the door in Farage's face. Is that the right thing to do, or is the party over for the Tories? Next up, there's been a massive surge in parents claiming disability benefits for the under-18s, soaring to an astonishing 730,000. That's 200,000 higher since lockdowns. Now, is this real, or is it a racket, or is something more sinister going on? A systemic medicalisation of British children. And Premier League footballers will take the knee once again, starting this weekend. Is this a way of stamping out racism, or is it virtue signalling meaningless tosh? And we'll be in Scotland with the unique insurance initiative launched by a sandwich hut to protect your food from those pesky flying thieves. Yes, the feathered lafaffa, those seagulls. Well, to the show, always an absolute pleasure to have your company. The inbox has been going off the seams today. What's really got you going is the fact 6 out of 6 Conservatives have said no to Nigel Farage being allowed back into the party. What does that say about 4 million people who voted for the Reform Party at the next general election? Does that mean that they're not welcome? And also, taking the knee is back in football. 6 matches. Is that the right thing to do? At the moment, the political landscape we live in, people are being sent to prison for Facebook posts. What will happen to fans if they have the temerity to show their free speech and boo to taking the knee? Is this the right time to bring this back, or is it a noble and laudable exercise to stamp out football in racism? Let me know your thoughts. gbnews.com/your say. That's how you do it. But now it's your headlines with Tatiana Sanchez.
Martin, thank you, and good afternoon. The top stories. Ukraine's top commander says 100 Russian prisoners of war have been captured in the Kursk region. It's after Ukraine launched a surprise offensive that President Zelensky has admitted was easy and met with little resistance. It comes as the Russian city of Belgorod has declared a state of emergency amid daily Ukrainian shelling that the governor says is destroying homes and killing civilians. Evening Standard defence editor Robert Fox says Ukraine wants to keep the Russians guessing.
They're probing, they're pushing. Yes, you said they've got into the Kursk pocket. Zelensky admitted with great ease. They're now probing now away to the south and the east to Belgorod, which is where all this started, keeping the Russians guessing again. The game at the moment is to throw the Russians off balance for as much as possible.
The Australian Department of Foreign Affairs has confirmed an 11-year-old girl stabbed in Leicester Square is an Australian tourist. Australian consulate officials in London are offering support to the girl's family. It's also been reported that the victim, who suffered 8 stab wounds to the face, neck and upper body, will likely require plastic surgery. A woman has been jailed for admitting to sending a threatening message on Facebook in the wake of the recent riots and disorder across the UK. 53-year-old Julie Sweeney sent the following Facebook message on the 3rd of August. She said, "Don't protect the mosques, blow the mosque up with the adults in it." A judge has encouraged prosecutors to consider charging offenders who played central roles in the recent disorder in parts of the country, a charge that carries a maximum sentence of 10 years. A former milkman who repeatedly charged at police during violent disorder in Whitehall has been sentenced to 14 months in prison. 50-year-old David Probert, who's from Hertfordshire, appeared in court today after pleading guilty to 1 charge of violent disorder. Footage played to the court showed Probert repeatedly lunging and charging at police who were attempting to defuse the situation. Police arrested over 120 people following violent disorder outside Downing Street on July 31st, 2 days after a stabbing killed 3 little girls at a dance studio in Southport. In other news, Reform UK leader Nigel Farage has no future in the Conservative Party, no matter who replaces Rishi Sunak as leader. That's according to Tory leadership candidate Mel Stride. Stride today confirmed that he wouldn't allow him to sit on the Conservative benches in the Commons. It means that all of the 6 candidates to replace Rishi Sunak as leader have declined to work closely with Nigel Farage. The position is in contrast to Sunak, who twice told GB News last year that Farage could join the party, saying it was a broad church. Officials say 2 men found dead in a burned-out car in Sweden were British nationals. 33-year-old Juan Cifuentes and 37-year-old Farouk Abdulrazak were reported missing last month after failing to return home from a business trip to Denmark and Sweden. Swedish prosecutors say they've now identified the remains as belonging to the 2 men. The Swedish Prosecution Authority has said relatives in the UK have been notified and its investigation into the deaths is ongoing. Violent attacks against women on British railways have more than doubled since 2021. New data shows the number of crimes against women and girls rose by 50% and the number of sexual offences jumped up by 10%. Unacceptable behaviour such as touching, upskirting or indecent exposures being experienced by women more than ever, with 51% of female victims stating that other rail passengers intervened to try to help. Safeguarding Minister Jess Phillips says violence against women and girls is a national emergency.
The government have made it incredibly clear that tackling the scourge of violence against women and girls is part of its core mission. We consider it to be a national emergency, and that won't just change overnight. This is going to take the leaders of government working across every government department, making sure that in our education system, for example, that the attitudes that end with men on our transport systems harassing and assaulting women are dealt with at source.
And urgent tests are underway on a canal in the West Midlands after a sodium cyanide spill. Walsall Council said the Environment Agency told it about a toxic chemical spillage that went directly into the canal at Pleck on Monday. A major incident's been declared and people are being warned to avoid the 12-mile stretch of canal leading to Birmingham. Sodium cyanide can cause seizures, vomiting and loss of consciousness. Those are the latest GB News headlines for now. I'm Tatiana Sanchez. More from me in half an hour.
For the very latest GB News direct to your smartphone, sign up to News Alerts by scanning the QR code or go to gbnews.com/alerts.
Thank you, Tatiana. Now let's kick off with a whopping story here from Chris Hope, our political editor. And Nigel Farage will not be allowed to join the Conservative Party, whoever replaces Rishi Sunak as leader. Well, speaking on Chopper's political podcast, Mel Stride has become the latest of the 6 candidates, now 6 out of 6, to distance himself from the Reform UK leader, claiming his comments on the Southport attack suspects put the police in danger. So will this fuel the comeback of the Tories, or are they signing their own death warrant? Well, let's discuss this further with that man, Chris Hope, our political editor. So, Chris, it's an astonishing state of affairs so soon into the leadership race, not until November, when the future leader is declared. 6 out of 6 say no to Nigel. What on earth are they thinking?
Yes, and we moved on this because it wasn't so long ago, as you said, I said earlier, Martin, that Nigel Farage said he wouldn't join the Tories under this leader, clearly hoping that someone would come along who would succeed him and make this merger happen between Reform UK and the kind of energy behind that with the 4 million votes last election and the Tory party and take the fight to stalemate. Instead, all 6 MPs now want to succeed Sunak, have told us. They do not think that Farage can join their party. Farage himself says it's of no interest to me whatsoever. He's on holiday somewhere with his feet up. But this really was triggered by Mel Stride overnight. Now, he's the outsider, but he could win. You know, outsiders often win these long races. I asked him about whether he would allow Farage back in, and I also asked him about the remarks by Nigel Farage when he questioned on X, on his Twitter account, whether the truth was being told to us about the Southport attacker. And here's what Mel Stride had to say.
How is it helpful when you've got police officers going out there risking their lives in a rioting situation to be questioning whether they're being truthful with the public, for example? It's likely to lead to more police officers ending up getting in more trouble than they would otherwise.
So his remarks,
so it's not responsible.
His remarks are putting the safety of police at risk.
I think his remarks about the police not being truthful, potentially, around what happened, let me put it like this, were deeply unhelpful to those officers that were then having to go out and deal with the consequence of the rioting.
Given all that, would you allow him to be a member of the Tory party if you were leader?
Absolutely not. I made that very clear. So no deals with Nigel Farage. Look, Nigel Farage wants to destroy the Conservative Party.
So there we have. That is clear as a bell. The second of the 6 candidates in 1 week. Chris, you've got on this question. Most right there said no deals. Tom Tugendhat, when you spoke to him, he simply said no when you asked could Nigel Farage join. Priti Patel has said Farage is a friend, but I would not allow him to destroy the Conservative Party. James Cleverly, Nigel Farage needs to decide if he's a serious politician or a social media content generator. I think that's a no. Robert Jenrick said there'll be no deal with Farage. Kemi Badenoch has said repeatedly over and over there is no way back for Nigel Farage into the Conservative Party. He says he wants to destroy the party. I will not allow him to destroy it or even to take it over. 6 out of 6 no's. What does that say to those 4 million people who voted for the Reform Party at the last election? Not all of them Conservatives, but a great rump of them are.
Great question. I mean, I would say the majority of those 4 million are former Tories. I don't understand why none of these 6 leaders are saying to us, I'll talk to anybody who can help me beat Labour. That surely is what the Tory party should be saying to itself, because they want to get organised, work out why the right is split, sort out that problem, talk to Farage, talk to his people around him, maybe work out a way to take the fight to Labour. That isn't happening here, and it is cutting off a large chunk of the electorate by doing this, and risk being squeezed between Labour and Liberal Democrats in the centre ground. Having said that, let's not forget that Labour won the election without the support of Jeremy Corbyn. The far left were quiet; they were shrunk down. That could be the case. Maybe you don't need to talk to Farage. But it's quite a risk because the middle ground is a contested area. You were a former Brexit Party MEP. Nigel Farage was your leader. How will he react to this?
I think he'll be delighted, because I think this now gives an absolute binary choice. If you stand for the policies of the Reform Party, which of cutting immigration down is the number one issue, the ECHR, net zero, rowing back on that, you've got a clear choice now. This, to me, doesn't just say no to Nigel, it says no to the policies, the direction of travel
those
of
policies you
party.
mentioned there are ones which are adopted by these candidates. Mel Stride wants to get immigration down to tens of thousands. They want to be
David Cameron said that.
I know.
It never happened.
And he thinks he's going to be halved by September down to 250,000 or so, but he thinks they can get there. So you might have the same prospect that's being offered but one's Farage and one is the new Tory leader. And then what's the point of that?
You might get that, except... will there be sign-up from the Tory MPs? You know as fellows full well as I do that the Tory party is two parties within one. It is two parties on Brexit, always was, two parties on immigration, two parties on planning, two parties on everything. And so if the route is to become a centrist party, you're, in effect, I think, Chris, trying to please everybody and pleasing nobody.
This is why I'm not sure... Maybe we're missing a trick here. Maybe all these 6 candidates are talking just to the 121 or so Tory MPs who are voting to get them down to 2 candidates from 6. And after that, they'll go into the base and they'll be speaking to members, our viewers, everyone else's viewers, listeners, and trying to convince them of why they should be leader. And maybe then they soften their attitude towards Nigel Farage. Farage himself hasn't helped, by the way, with the remarks about Putin during the election campaign, the remarks about Southport, as discussed. I mean, he is a Marmite figure, and many Tory candidates at the election and MPs will have been bruised by the strong performance of Reform UK. So maybe they're trying to appeal to other Tory MPs by saying this. But I think if were I involved in this campaign, I think this is an error by these 6 candidates not to show that they want to at least talk to Farage and understand why people support him.
Farage might be Marmite, but are the Tories toast? Chris, excellent story, as ever, setting the agenda every single day on GB News. Brilliant stuff. I'm now joined by the former Labour MP, Dennis McShane. Dennis, welcome to the show. So you may have heard Chris there saying maybe the Tory party don't need Nigel Farage in the same way as the Labour Party didn't need Jeremy Corbyn. The party was purged of the left. Is this, you think, the right thing to do? Is this the Tory party purging themselves of what many see as the right wing?
Not yet. I do think they're not going to come back into power. For heaven's sake, Martin, how many weeks are we into a new government and how many months, years are we away from a new election? But the iron law of politics is you win from the centre. And Nigel has never occupied centre ground. I mean, that's always been his stock in trade. That's why people admire or don't like him. I thought at the time, it wasn't so much his first statements hinting at a conspiracy. The police aren't giving us the full facts. I said, oh, God, Nigel. But as the riots got worse, and the one thing British people don't do is support anyone who seems in any way to be indulging throwing rocks at cops, wounding cops, sending them into hospital and openly hating. You've got problems with immigration, but British Muslims are our doctors, our dentists, they're our care workers, they're our business colleagues. And generating that hate against British Muslims is a disaster.
Dennis, I think we can all agree. Dennis, can I object? I think we can all agree on that. But can we try and stay on point about the Tory 6 candidates all ruling out any form of alignment with Nigel Farage in the future? And what I'm particularly interested in is, from the Labour Party's point of view, what does that say? Does this say a party that's trying to get back into that centre ground? Is that more of an electoral threat?
It does. I mean, I've always argued that we saw the Tory party after Tony Blair winning, going down the road with Michael Howard, Ian Duncan Smith. I mean, estimable men, but absolutely out in the far, far right of modern politics. And they lost 3 elections. So I'm very happy if the Tory party becomes more and more, I hate the word, I don't want to use the word extreme, but you know what I mean, Martin. That will keep Sir Keir Starmer in Downing Street for certainly at the next election, which is the one he must be thinking about. I think Nigel now is an MP. His strength has been he's never was an MP. I mean, no disrespect to MEPs, they are elected, but it's a protest vote. We all know, well, I'm sorry, I don't want to criticise you either. But now he's got to play in big time Premier League politics. He got it wrong at the beginning of the riots and he didn't pull back quickly enough. He did later on, to be fair. He sort of half apologised, but it was too late. I'm looking at the opinion polls. Other than Reform Party, even Leave voters now I've got negative opinions on Nigel Farage. So, of course, Tugendhat and the rest. I mean, Tugendhat's a complete cynic. I'm not going to go into details about it, but the idea he's a moderate or a centrist or pro-European is just nonsense. He just is a complete opportunist.
Dennis, Dennis, I'm with Martin in the studio, Chris Hope here. Can I ask you a question? Do you think Labour will be pleased about this or not? Because it does leave the right still split, doesn't it? Yeah, I just wonder whether they'll be pleased.
Yes, I think Labour's will have a spring in its step. I mean, they're all on summer holiday now, spring on the beach, as they're building sandcastles for their children. But it's good news for Labour, particularly going in now, slowly approaching the conference season, and you can depict the Tories as in the grip of ultra-right-wing fanatics, a bit like Marine Le Pen and other people like that. I think that's incredibly dangerous territory for the Conservative Party.
Dennis McShane, you can't just say that the Tory Party is in the grip of ultra-far-right nationalists. Who? Who do you
mean? Look, we had an election, whatever it was, a month or so ago, and the Tories were absolutely trounced because Labour finally, having spent far too long after losing the election in 2010...
Yeah, but who is ultra-far-right, like Marine Le Pen in the Conservative Party?
Well, I don't think there's certainly, I mean, Suella Braverman, she appears on platforms in Brussels with Viktor Orban, who is Putin's official representative in the EU, and talks about immigrant invasion, anti-Muslim rhetoric. I'm sorry, Mark, I've done an awful lot of interviews on French radio and television since during the period of the riots. Thank God they've gone away now, and I'm in America right now.
But millions and millions of people voted for that. You might despise that politics, Dennis, but the point is people want to change, and they're entitled to vote how they want without you smearing them as ultra-far-right fanatics.
They indeed are, and I've argued, and you've been very courteous, giving me time on GB News, on how to change immigration rules so we manage immigration. Switzerland has twice the level of immigrants as we do, but none of the nonsense and unpleasant anti-Muslim rhetoric that we have on the right of British politics, including people talking about invasions and being swamped and all the rest of it. Now, I think this is all the Tory people who are running now have to try and win back that centre ground. It did it for Starmer. It did it for Tony Blair. It did it actually for Margaret Thatcher at the time. And now you've got to find a modern way of getting back to the centre ground.
But Dennis, Sir Keir Starmer's popularity has plummeted since the riots. A lot of people are seeing his leadership as very heavy-handed. People being jailed for Facebook posts. People going straight to jail for being a part of riots, even accidentally. No chance to get their case across. Being rushed through in the courts. Now, that might go down well with his base, but 7 of those riots happened in the most disadvantaged seats in the United Kingdom. They happened in the seats with the most asylum seekers who've been foisted on them. Yes. Dennis McShane, they happened in Labour seats. So to point out that these are all far-right extremists, it's happening in Labour territory.
Of course it is, and you kindly had me on the programme, and I say again and again, all the parties have let down the British people. They've not trained our young people, they've not given them jobs, they've let bosses impose poverty, 0-hour wages. So of course they can't afford a house, a home, and when you after you've left school
because of uncontrolled immigration.
And then they look at and indeed we should have much stricter controls on immigration, managing it inside the country, but also, Martin, look to the richest, most stable country in Europe and ask yourself why.
We're not the richest, most stable country in Europe, Dennis McShane. We're the United Kingdom. We have a huge amount of problems. We have immigration that millions of voters say is off the scale. People don't feel listened to. Nobody is pardoning the actions of the riots, but it's happening. Yes. It's not going to get any better anytime soon, I don't think, and it's happening on Sir Keir Starmer's watch. Now Nigel Farage represents a voice, an alternative voice. Today, the Conservative Party has said, well, that voice has no place in our party. Does that, though, represent a viable alternative. The Reform Party might be going to Labour seats, like the ones where the riots have been, and trying to take your votes.
They might indeed, but I'm old enough, Martin, you're such a young chap. I remember when not quite the equivalent of Nigel Farage in the late 1960s, a chap called Enoch Powell made very similar speeches about repatriation and too much immigration. And Edward Heath turned out to be a disaster as a Prime Minister, but no matter, he expelled Enoch Powell, and the Tories won the next election again and again. It's not, the particular issue is important. It's broadly the sense that voters aren't going to go for parties that aren't on the centre ground. Now, you can have a debate about what's extreme and what's not extreme. I think Nigel just isn't used now to domestic politics. It may sound sort of foolish given how popular and his success over 20 years, but I think now he's got to learn a completely new political game, and he may just be a tad not as young as once he was to learn it.
OK, we have to leave it there. Dennis McShane, none of us are getting any younger. Thanks for joining us, and also thanks to you, Chris Hope, for joining me here in the studio. Thank you very much. Now, a record number of children are on disability benefits after a surge in autism and ADHD. Is this real or is it a racket? I'm Martin Daubney on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Hi there, I'm Michelle Dewberry, and I'm going to take a second to tell you all about my show, Dubes & Co. We start off with the issues of the day. We then bring in both sides of the arguments. We get rid of the disrespect. And then you throw me into the mix. And trust me, I'll tell it exactly how it is. And then, of course, the magic ingredient, you at home. We mix it all together, and what have we got? In my opinion, the best debate show in town. Monday to Friday, 6 till 7 on GB News, Britain's news channel.
GB News Breakfast, every day from 6 a.m.
Football and gambling can go hand in hand and cause long-term problems. New figures show that young adults aged between 16 and 24 who have bet over the last year are more likely to report mental health issues compared to those in older age groups.
And joining us now to discuss this is Matt Burgess, who is a former gambling addict and now helps those to deal with their own gambling issues.
Yeah, I think gambling is one of those things that is so accessible now. Everyone's got a kind of mobile phone in their pocket, walk around with a kind of 24-hour casino, if you like. So I think it's really important that people realise that we have to sort of recognise that that is a month of quite condensed gambling, and we don't want people to sort of carry that on into their everyday life, because that's when it can become really risky and it could become addictive.
I had no idea, though, that it was linked to first-time gambling. For the first time, people might be able to pick up and have a go. And then it doesn't end there. It goes on, because by then you've got the bug. Is that how it works?
You've got to remember, for things like the Euros, the World Cup, so you get a lot more people watching football and therefore potentially betting on football.
May I ask you about how severe your own gambling addiction got?
Well, look, I think there was a couple of touch points for me where I realised that things were getting out of hand. There were some times at university where, I kind of thought, I'm definitely doing this a bit too much, but, kind of thought maybe it would move on once I left, but it didn't. It did follow me. And then, I got to points where I was at my worst gambling 16, 17 hours a day. I was spending huge amounts of money. It can spiral out of control very, very quickly, and that was the important thing that we want to highlight is, what can start as fun can become very, very dangerous in a sense.
GB News, the People's Channel.
Join me, Camilla Tominey, for a frank and honest discussion with those in power that cuts through the spin and gets to the heart of the issues shaping our nation.
You haven't confirmed that you want to stand as leader, but you haven't ruled it out either.
This report basically says that he's not fit to stand trial. Is he indecisive? Incompetent? I deliver the dose of reality Westminster needs. That's the Camilla Tominey Show at 9:30 every Sunday on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Welcome back. It's 5:27. I'm Martin Daubney on GB News. Now, a record number of parents are claiming benefits for their children. More than 730,000 under 18s are now receiving disability living allowance. That's a 40% increase since November 29. Now, what's going on here? To discuss that, I'm joined by Neil Hamilton, the former leader of UKIP. Neil, what do you think is going on here? Are children getting more sick, or are they simply being diagnosed more? And if so, why?
Well, the problem with autism and psychological disorders is that you can't see or test them in the way that you can for other diseases. If you've got measles, you know you've got measles, but you can prove that without any doubt. But if you go to your doctor and say, and this is stopping me working, then what's the doctor going to do? He can't prove categorically that you're swinging the lead. But you look at the figures. I mean, there are 30,000 new claims for personal independence payment being added to the total every single month. That's up from 17,000 in 2019. And I think what's happening with these psychological disorders is that greater awareness of mental health means that people with less severe conditions are coming forward thinking that they can claim benefits as well. And criteria for diagnosing somebody with, say, autism, which is a spectrum condition from very, very severe to almost disable, it means that the criteria for diagnosing people with these disorders is ever widening, and that then leads to yet more people claiming. So Professor Ginny Russell of the University of Exeter says that if things go on like this, then we'll be diagnosing everybody as being neurodiverse. And I think somebody's got to get a grip on this somewhere. I mean, sums of money involved are colossal.
Now, Neil, nobody would deny that those who are genuinely unwell should be diagnosed and helped. But isn't the broader point that we now seem to be medicating and diagnosing children that in the past would have just been problem children, children that need more maintenance, more resource, more TLC? Now we're popping them a pill, medicating them, putting them on a list. And also an extra fact, Neil Hamilton, is that every one of these kids becomes a special education needs child. The school then gets more funding. There's an incentive for the diagnosis to increase.
Well, there's a vast incentive here. As I said earlier on, the number of claims for personal independence payments has gone up from 17,000 in 2019 to 30,000 every single month. That's costing the Treasury £15 billion a year. So this is a bottomless pit that we can fill with money. Of course, if there's a financial incentive for people to qualify for benefits, then they will work as hard as they possibly can to qualify. And if you've got doctors who think it's easier just to find the sick note, then, of course, that completes the circle, doesn't it? So, yes, of course, I've got enormous sympathy with people who suffer from real psychological disorders. I've met quite a few of them in my time as a Member of Parliament and a member of the Welsh Parliament, and I've helped parents to claim benefits for their children. We've now got 730,000 people under 18 who are claiming disability living allowance, and that's gone up by 40% in the last 5 years. Now, these rates of increase must indicate that there is something wrong in the system, that the criteria for being able to claim these benefits is somehow too wide, or they're not being properly policed.
Neil, we have to leave there. And it's also, of course, worth pointing out that we had the lockdown, 200,000 extra children been diagnosed since then. We said at the time, isolating children who are borderline, had underlying conditions already. They got far, far worse through the social isolation, missing out on that vital social contact with their peer groups. Undeniably, putting kids under lock and key did great damage to their mental health. That's worth pointing out. Neil Hamilton, former leader of UKIP, thank you very much for joining us on the show this afternoon. There's loads more still to come between now and 6 o'clock. We'll find out which furry friend has been born for the first time in London in 400 years. But first, your latest news headlines with Tatiana Sanchez.
Martin, thank you. The top stories. Ukraine's top commander says 100 Russian prisoners of war have been captured in the Kursk region. It's after Ukraine launched a surprise offensive that President Zelensky has admitted was easy and met with little resistance. It comes as the Russian city of Belgorod has declared a state of emergency amid daily Ukrainian shelling that the government says is destroying homes and killing civilians. The Australian Department of Foreign Affairs has confirmed an 11-year-old girl stabbed in Leicester Square is an Australian tourist. Australian consulate officials in London are offering support to the girl's family. It's also been reported the victim, who suffered 8 stab wounds to the face, neck and upper body, will likely require plastic surgery. A woman has been jailed for admitting to sending a threatening Facebook message in the wake of the recent rise in disorder across the UK. 53-year-old Julie Sweeney sent the following Facebook message on the 3rd of August. She said, "Don't protect the mosques, blow the mosque up with the adults in it." A judge has encouraged prosecutors to consider charging offenders who played a central role in the recent disorder in parts of the country, a charge that carries a maximum sentence of 10 years. Officials say 2 men found dead in a burned-out car in Sweden were British nationals. 33-year-old Juan Cifuentes and 37-year-old Farouk Abdulrazak were reported missing last month after failing to return home from a business trip. The families of both men have paid tribute to 2 beautiful, innocent, hard-working souls. The Swedish Prosecution Authority says its investigation into the deaths is ongoing. And urgent tests are underway on a canal in the West Midlands after a sodium cyanide spill. Walsall Council said the Environment Agency told it about a toxic chemical spillage that went directly into the canal at Pleck on Monday. A major incident has been declared and people are being warned to avoid the 12-mile stretch of canal leading to Birmingham. Sodium cyanide can cause seizures, vomiting and loss of consciousness. And those are the latest GB News headlines for now. I'm Tatiana Sanchez. More from me in half an hour.
For the very latest GB News direct to your smartphone, sign up to News Alerts by scanning the QR code or go to gbnews.com/alerts.
Cheers Britannia Wine Club proudly sponsors the GB News Financial Report. Cheers Britannia Wine Club proudly sponsors the GB News Financial Report.
Thank you, Tatiana. That's my favourite part of the show. I'm joined by Michelle Dubey, the queen of political prime-time debate. Jubes and co, of course, 6 or 7 Jubes. What's on your menu?
Hello, you. Well, I've got Aaron Bastani and Peter Hitchens joining me tonight. Gosh, where do we even begin? Of course, I want to look at things like inflation, all of these plans to tackle work shyness. Also, I want to look at some of these convictions because, you know, I get it. If you're there battering people at the front of a riot, then yes, of course, they're going to be sending you to prison. But we're seeing people jailed now for swearing, pointing, putting pictures up on Facebook. Is this all heading in a bit of a concerning direction? I want to ask about that. And also plans being drawn up now to get people Brits out of Israel, potentially, if Iran attack. I also want to look at that too.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. A lot of people feeling that swift justice is coming a bit too swift, a bit too hard, but not to everybody. Michelle Dubry, superb. Jubes and Co, 6 till 7. Great stuff. Thank you. Now, if you want to get in touch, please do. Hundreds have been in touch so far, particularly on the topic of the Premier League footballers. Once again, taking the knee. To get in touch, gbnews.com/you'll say. Read out the best of your messages a little later in the show. I'm Martin Daubney on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Hello, good afternoon. Welcome to your latest GB News weather update brought to you from the Met Office. Through the rest of the day, should stay dry for many areas. Tomorrow is looking fairly breezy with some pretty heavy rain arriving into the northwest overnight tonight. But for the rest of the day, an occluded front lies across eastern areas. That's been bringing cloudier skies here through much of the day and some drizzly rain. That risk continues through this evening, but the clouds should tend to break up and push away into the east. Behind that, clear skies for many areas of England and Wales, but across the far northwest, a band of quite blustery rain will spread into parts of Scotland and Northern Ireland by tomorrow morning. The temperatures will pick up here as well, so a milder night for northern areas, but a fresher night across the south. Temperatures much closer to where they should be across southeastern areas tonight. So a fairly bright start to the day for southern areas, but in the north, this is where we've got the heavier rain, and it's going to be quite persistent through the day, particularly across western areas, coastal areas and high ground of western areas of Scotland, as well as Northern Ireland. That rain will push down into northwestern England, particularly across Cumbria, the Lake District, seeing some very persistent rain through the day. At first, the rain will be quite light across Wales and across the east, a much brighter start tomorrow compared to today. And it should stay fairly dry and fine across central and eastern areas of England through much of the day, but it is going to be a breezier day tomorrow than today. And wetter weather, though, dominating for more northern areas. So a pretty miserable day for much of Scotland, northern England and parts of Wales. Temperatures here struggling in the mid-teens for some areas, a fresher feel arriving into the northwest later, but still, despite that breeze, temperatures climbing towards the mid-20s across the south and east. That rain will spread its way south and east into central areas of England and the southeast by Friday morning. It will turn much drier and clearer from the north and west, and that more dry weather will dominate through the weekend. Plenty of sunny spells to come and temperatures around average, if not a bit above.
The latest GB News travel.
Good afternoon. Big problems in Cheshire on the M56 eastbound. One lane still out of action from junction 14 to 12. The Chester services towards the Runcorn exit at the scene of an accident, causing queues back to the M53 interchange. In the West Midlands, two problems on the M6. First of all, northbound recovery work following an accident closes two lanes from junction 5 to 6. Castle Bromwich Spaghetti heading towards Birmingham. And then further north, a lane shut southbound just south of the M5 following a collision. In Bedfordshire, south of Leighton Buzzard, the A505 closed at Billington following a serious accident. Really still on the Kent stretch of the M25 both ways around Dartford following an earlier police investigation. Queues back to the M20. And on public transport in London, no Circle Line Edgware Road to Aldgate or District Line Edgware Road to Earls Court following a points failure at High Street, Kensington. That's the latest.
You can stay up to date throughout the day by visiting our website, gbnews.com.
Welcome back. It's 5:39. We're on the final furlong now. A treat is in store now for nature lovers because baby beavers have been born in urban London for the first time in 400 years. Now, this comes after a family of Eurasian beavers were introduced to a nature reserve in West London last October as part of a biodiversity project. It's a story that's going to make your cockles be warmed. And here is Dr. Sean McCormack, who is the chair of the Ealing Wildlife Group, and he joins me now. What a wonderful story, Dr. McCormack. Tell us more about this magical story of triumph over urban adversity.
Yeah, thanks, Martin. Thanks for having me on. It's been a busy couple of days announcing this development to the project. So basically, we went to Ealing Council and Natural England and said that beavers are back in Britain and there will come a time when beavers are kind of colonising towns and cities, and we want to learn how to live alongside beavers in the urban environment, in the urban context. And the place we produce or put them into is called Paradise Fields. It's an area that suffers a lot downstream from urban flooding. So we said to the council, instead of spending hundreds of thousands, possibly millions of pounds on expensive engineering works, beavers could provide this ecosystem service and flood mitigation for us. So let's trial something different and new and exciting, not only for kind of flood alleviation, but also for biodiversity improvements and for engaging urban communities with nature. So we put them in last October. They've done really well. And we were absolutely thrilled this month to see two tiny baby beaver kits emerge from the lodge.
I'm just seeing some superb footage there on the screens of like a nature watch nighttime environment. And of course, Dr. McCormack, beavers were indigenous for many, many centuries all across Europe. They were hunted to the point of extinction, weren't they, because of their pelts. How are you taking care of these beavers?
That's right. Yeah, they were a very valuable animal and we hunted them to extinction in this country 400 years ago. They were down to about 1,200 beavers across the whole of Europe. So we really nearly wiped them out because they were quite valuable to us. But we realized they were actually more valuable to us alive than dead. They provide a whole range of ecosystem services. Their wetlands are extremely complex and capture carbon. They clean the air. They provide flood alleviation in the wintertime with high rainfall. and they provide drought mitigation in summer by holding more water on the land. So there's been many efforts across Europe to reintroduce them, and we're kind of lagging behind here in Britain with reintroducing them. They've been back for about 25 years or so, and it's thought that there's about 2,000 to 3,000 living wild free lives, but ours are in an enclosure trial. We're taking very good care of them. We got 5 beavers, mum, dad, adolescent daughter, and 2 kits from last year, and now we've had 2 new additions, so we're up to at least 7. We've only seen 2 kits together so far, but there may be more, we don't know. But yeah, we're looking after them with a team, an army of volunteers. It's a community-led project, and everyone is totally enamored with them, and even more so now that these tiny little beavers in miniature have appeared.
And Sean, obviously we're pre-watershed without going into details. How difficult is it to get these beavers to breed?
We didn't have to do very much. We just provided them with the space. We've given them about 4 times the recommended space recommended by Beaver Trust, and it's absolutely beautiful habitat for beavers. So we were very confident that they would come in there to Paradise Fields in Greenford and think this is a paradise for us. They've got plenty of food, places to hide, plenty of space. Crucially, this is a publicly accessible project, so plenty of space to get away from people and dogs, which was one of the main concerns that the community had around the project. But they've cracked on. They've made 5 or 6 dams now, actually, and they've created deep water refuge for themselves. They were perfectly content. And earlier in the summer, I spotted the mum kind of leaning up to capture some willow and eat. And she had quite prominent teeth. So I knew there was babies in the lodge, but we had all our fingers crossed that they would emerge and be healthy and happy and survive, and they have. So yeah, there's a real team and there's a real feel-good factor in the whole of Ealing now, that our beavers have had babies, and they're the first ones in urban London. Not the first ones in London. Enfield were about a year ahead of us on that front, but they're in quite a rural location on the outskirts of London. This is in the heart of an urban area, urban community. So it's really different and unique, and it's fully publicly accessible, so people can come in and see what beavers can do.
Great stuff, a real feel-good story, and heaven knows we need that at the moment. Dr. Sean McCormack, the chair of the Ealing Wildlife Group, thank you very much for sharing your beautiful beavers with us. Now, from cute, furry animals to pesky birds, we're crossing over to St Andrews Beach in Scotland next, where seagulls are stealing snacks from the beachgoers. I'm Martin Daubney on GB News, Britain's news channel.
I'm Christopher Hope. From pop stars to politicians, I'll interview anybody in a pub who's got a political opinion. Join me every Friday on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, YouTube or gbnews.com, or wherever you get your podcasts. This is GB News, the People's Channel.
Good afternoon, Britain.
Your lunchtime update on the stories that matter across the UK.
From breaking news and insightful analysis, inspiring stories and lively debates.
You're comparing yourself to a former Prime Minister. Which is it?
Stay informed, stay updated, stay entertained.
I just don't know how anyone would not want to be there.
Every weekday from midday.
We are Good Afternoon Britain, only on GB News.
Britain's news channel.
Sir Jacob Rees-Mogg's State of the Nation, Monday to Thursday from 8 p.m.
A court on Wednesday ruled that a teenager was wrongly ignored before being forced into end-of-life care. Sudiksha Thirumalesh, who was 19, died last year after being prevented from travelling abroad for treatment after doctors said her condition was incurable. Doctors said Ms. Thirumalesh's objection to their decision was unreasonable and that she should have all life-sustaining treatment ended and be put on a palliative care pathway. Last August, a ruling said that the teenager lacked mental capacity to make her own decisions, but 3 judges in the Court of Appeal overturned that decision last week. Lawyers said the move reaffirms the right of patients to disagree with their doctors. The teenager remained fully conscious while being treated by the University Hospitals Birmingham NHS Foundation Trust. Well, to discuss this tragic case, Sudiksha's father, Thirumalesh, and brother, Varshan, join me now. Thank you so much for joining me in these desperately sad circumstances. This is very important for other people who may find themselves in a similar position, that they will be able to make decisions about their own care with the support of their families, rather than the sometimes arrogance of the medical profession who think that they know best. So you must be, I hope, very reassured by this judgment that Sudik Shah has achieved something for other people.
Yes, definitely, because this arrogance transformed into cruelty towards my sister's care and ill treatment of the whole family. They think they are on the top of the hierarchical spectrum, and they treated us like we were on the bottom of the lower end of the chains, or rather as low class, but we ensured that our class remained.
GB News, the People's Channel.
I'm Michelle Dewberry, and this is GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Welcome back. It's 5:47. We're on the final furlong, and now one sandwich shop in St Andrews up in Scotland is taking a very different approach to seagulls who snatch their customers' meals. The owners of the Cheesy Toast Shack have introduced a seagull insurance of 50 pence per butty. But what exactly does that mean? Well, our Scotland reporter Tony Maguire was there and sent us this report.
Good afternoon and welcome to St Andrews, and I am here with the owner Sam of the Cheesy Toast Shack. Sam, hello, welcome. Hi. Tell me, we've been hearing about it all day, it's got our viewers talking. Tell me about this insurance, what's that all about?
So we had this kind of idea, basically inundated with spates of seagull attacks at the beach. And we've always, as a small business, decided we'll just replace them. You know, we've always tried to do like the good deed, bit of good vibes. You know, try and make sure all our customers are leaving happy. But the attacks were getting so often that we've decided to introduce a £1 optional. By the way, it's not compulsory. Seagull insurance. Seagull takes your food, we'll replace it, providing you've bought the insurance, that is.
And of course, it sounds quite tongue-in-cheek, you know, and it's a wee bit of fun, but obviously there was a very good reason why you introduced this, right?
Absolutely, yeah. So obviously a lot of money as a business, you know, to replace all these sandwiches. And secondly, we hated the customers leaving unhappy, or, you know, after queuing for an hour to wait for a sandwich. You see how busy we are today, and we just wanted to keep making sure that the customers leave satisfied, you know, and this is a way we could sort of mitigate any losses and, yeah, like I say, keep the customers happy.
I did, just before we came on there, I did speak to somebody who they had just literally had the crust of their toastie, thankfully, snaffled by a seagull, and she paid for the insurance, you know, and she thought, OK, they only got the crust, but somehow she was still kind of warmed by the fact that she had thought ahead and that you guys had helped her for this. In fact, she even bought some of your merch there as well for the whole experience of the seagull dive bombing. So I'm guessing I'm asking, this is really common, right?
They've become, in the past year or so, really common, these seagull attacks, and in a strange way, it's almost become a bit of an experience down here. You know, people always mention it if it's happened to them and kind of make a bit of a joke about it. We've even incorporated the kind of seagull into our logo. You know, we had an illustrator draw up this kind of sort of mean-looking seagull that smokes a cigarette, has a hat, has got a tattoo, and that was always just a bit of a tongue-in-cheek gesture, you know, to address the fact about these gulls taking people's food and how aggressive they could be.
And I guess it's also important to ask, you know, you guys are not anti-gull, right?
Absolutely not anti-gull, nah, like we are all, you know, we're based at the beach, we're aware that seagulls are part of the natural environment here, and we're definitely not looking to do a cull or anything like that, but we are just looking for a fun, tongue-in-cheek way of kind of basically dealing with the problem we've got here.
And lastly, I think it is also worth saying that that money, the extra £1, you know, which was initially used to try and stem your losses, well, the insurance has proved so popular that that's now getting used elsewhere, isn't that right?
Absolutely. So, like, today we started the seagull insurance at 9 a.m. We've probably got about 150 people have taken us up on it. So, and we've not had one claim back yet. So that means that money, come the end of the year, you know, we'll be able to directly plough back into like community projects, whether it's sponsoring a local football team, you know, anything. So if anybody wants to approach us with any ideas for how we're going to spend this cash, just let us know.
Amazing. Well, Sam, thank you so much for talking to us. As you heard there, it's not easy being cheesy, but happy customers make life a beach here at St Andrews.
Superb stuff there. A novel way of protecting your butties from the flying Luftwaffe of seagulls. Now then, the big talking point today is taking the knee. The Premier League to reintroduce the controversial gesture 6 times in the forthcoming season, including on the opening fixture of this season. Hundreds and hundreds of you have been in touch. I spoke to Danny Mills, the former footballer, earlier. He said he didn't think it was the right thing to do. Bear in mind that even black players have refused to do this before. We saw on the screen there Wilfred Zaha at the time of Crystal Palace. He didn't want to do it. He felt the gesture had become watered down and didn't make any difference. Same with Les Ferdinand. He was a director of football at QPR, of course, the former England legend. He didn't want to do it. He also thought it had become hollowed out. A lot of people feel it's just tied to the notion of Black Lives Matter, no matter what the Football Association say. A lot of people don't like what Black Lives Matter stood for during lockdowns. We saw the riots, we saw the police take the knee, we saw Sir Keir Starmer take the knee. Here are a few things that you've had to say. Now, Helpful Hound said this, that's me switching off the football. I refuse to watch any of these ridiculous spectacles. Russell says this, don't forget they are taking the knee for a criminal. Harsh words, but I know what you mean, Russell. Neil adds, the only people who are offended by this are racists. Scotty says this, if you want to stop it, then simply stop going to the football. Fan power, money, this is all that they care about. Simply refuse to give them your money. Richard has this, it's pointless, performative, it's an act that has changed precisely 0 minds. This is the wrong time to bring it back. And Tommy has this, that's it, I'm not watching the football again. Gareth echoes the sentiments of many where he says it's time to kick the politics out of football. This is a backward step. Just to finish off, my point on this is we live in a time where people are being arrested for what they say in the streets. They're being arrested for swearing. They're being arrested for Facebook posts. If they boo this, and that's their freedom of choice, will that get them arrested at the match? And will that help things at all? Now, that's it from me. Jubes & Co. is up next. Don't forget to join us at breakfast tomorrow, 6 a.m. It's Stephen and Ellie, followed by Britain's Newsroom at 9:30. Then it's Andrew and Bev. And then, of course, it's Tom and Emily with Good Afternoon Britain from midday. Now, my mush is back at 3. In fact, I'm back again tonight at 7. I'm covering for Nigel Farage. I'm Martin Daubney, and this is GB News. But now it's your weather with Annie Shuttleworth.
Looks like things are heating up. Boxed boilers, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Hello, good afternoon. Welcome to your latest GB News.